we are running a little behind and I apologize profusely, so I'm looking to hold this meeting to order, 7:21. And we'd like to ask everybody to stand.
I imagine not brought it in for guys. I will go get it. Sorry. Oh. I didn't know it.
The names. Sorry, no, the name.
Entirely full house tonight. All of our incredible.
Well, how many times have I?
Everything here is really fantastic. Thank you for highlighting.
Karen Hirsch, you need to push to talk. We can't hear you at home.
Yeah, I'm saying I apologize for pizza.
You have to push tonight.
I thought you press it, sorry. I apologize that we're running behind and I don't know why this is. Wait, this, hold on. But I just wanted to point out the incredible, we have a full house tonight of all of our staff, all of our administrative heads, our educators. We have teachers and so forth back here as well. And it's really nice to see all of you guys here together in a room smiling, actually. And I know we're going to have some great questions coming up because we had some great results in our achievement report and our curriculum planning, and I can't wait to get started. So I will turn that over to you, Dr. Jones, to get things started with our achievement report. And I hope everybody sat through the very long, Mark, and very interesting online presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Hirsch. Can you hear me? Is this on? Okay. First of all, I also just want to say thank you for being here tonight. Every building is represented. All of our principals are here, the coordinator team, everybody that worked on this presentation tonight. And it was only 108 slides. So there was a lot of work that went into this. So thank you to everybody. If you still need a chair, you're welcome to sit in these chairs along the wall. And there's some more back there as well. If you enjoy standing, that's okay too. But I'm going to turn it right over to Mr. D'Amico, wherever he is. Oh, there you are. You're on the side. You're hiding behind Sophie.
Yes, sir.
He gets this stuff. I see how it's.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here to serve at your pleasure. So you tell me how you'd like to do this. Let's start with what we've already given you. We've given you 108 slides to review, a narrated video for Dr. Mike. And we are happy to answer any questions you have about the achievement results for the Greenwich Public Schools. As you can see behind me, we have just about anybody that you could want to ask a question to here. So you can start with me and then I can start having people come join me at the table. Whatever makes you happy will make us happy tonight.
Well, before we even start with the opportunity to ask questions, I just really wanted to say to you, I really liked the format and presentation of the achievement report this year. It was really in depth and I appreciate that. Although you're, 40 minutes that was long, but I listened to it twice. So anyway, I just also wanted to say, I really appreciated the changes and the points of pride that you added for each school and for the highlights and points of pride for each of our, different areas of education, especially with, again, going back to the schools. It really highlights all of the school improvement plans. And I think that's a really nice opportunity for our each one of our schools to shine and show a little bit of the incredible things that each school community does within their school. And I just know after reading through, I think there's a lot to celebrate with GPS. And with that said, I think it's really important to acknowledge, especially since everybody is here, the incredible amount of work and dedication from our administrative team, our fantastic educators and support staff that are behind all of these successes. Oftentimes we're here asking questions and trying to dig in deep, but I think it's really, really important for us to say thank you to all of you because a lot of those achievement results wouldn't have happened without every single one of you and all of the educators in our district putting their hearts and souls every day into our students and their futures. So thank you.
We appreciate the recognition. Thank you.
And I will open it for questions. I mean, I'm happy to start, but it's anybody else. I'm happy to,
May I make a suggestion? Perhaps what we could do to keep it orderly and to keep it moving is we could do it by content area. And then I can bring, so for example, if we want to discuss ELA results, I can bring our ELA folks up to the table. This way we can minimize the back and forth between people getting up. And then we can move maybe to math, and then we can move to science. We could talk about it, the AP courses. Dr. Jones is prepared to answer survey questions. Would you like to maybe go by content area, or do you want to go by strategic plan goal? What would make it most convenient for you?
I can't speak for anybody else, but my questions go in order of the slides. Yeah, I mean, content area, but also jumps around by content area and grade. And
All right.
does anybody else have a question that start, or I'm happy to kick it off? Okay, I guess it's me. So, I know I ask this every year, and so I'll just put it out there. I was just hoping that we'll be able to get to see the results per school, per grade when they're compiled. And I'm going to jump in with the obvious question to start with, third grade. I know that there was a slight dip this year in both ELA and math for the third grade. And I was just sort of wondering why you thought there might have been a bit of a decline for the third grade this year as compared to prior years. And, I don't know what attributes that to it. Is it more about this specific third grade cohort, the makeup versus the others, the grades that came before? Which gets me to my next point is, I know you mentioned cohort comparison later on in the presentation, but I would really love to be able to look at these data results and achievement results following the cohorts. So I think that's looking at this year's third grade versus last year's third grade, as I mentioned, could be a different makeup of that grade versus, so to me, I think that's another point that I think is really important for us to look at, that each grade is made up of different individual students. But I'll get back to math and science in third grade if you thought there was might be a.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have Kim and Mike come up and talk about grade 3 ELA and math. In terms of the cohort data, we can certainly include that in what we're calling the data locker. And I think you will find some of what you referenced earlier already in the data locker. We did do the traditional school by school lineup by grade. So it's tucked away in the back.
Page 112.
Page 112.
It doesn't follow the same. You've got all grades, so, but
Right, but it doesn't follow.
doesn't have the cohort.
Kim?
Yeah, right, that's the
Mike?
point. Because it's all set in the beginning of the-
Well, this is every grade level is represented by every school. They didn't.
It's not following the
No.
third grader along.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Are you
have to
looking
say-
for matched cohort versus, yeah, we can provide.
Well, you have
It's a
all-
little
yeah.
bit more challenging than the unmatched cohort data.
112 slides.
Yeah.
I know you can do it. I believe in you.
Yeah.
Or whomever you're going to be tasking with this.
So it's my pleasure to, obviously, Kim Palladino is our K-8 ELA coordinator, and Mike Reeder's our K-8 math coordinator. One of the things I want to say is it's really a privilege to be able to work with such a talented team, and not just the coordinators. I'm also talking about our building leaders that are here tonight. I know everyone has already recognized the fact that they're here, but they're here because we have a singular vision. And I think that's really important to state, because when you have a singular vision and you are hyper focused on getting better every day, you start to see incremental changes in student performance. And I think that's really what gave me the idea of including the principal points of pride in this presentation, because so often we go right to let's compare the schools and let's go grade by grade, that we don't take the time to dig into the pockets of success that each school is having. And it's those little pockets of success that breed long-term success. And so I think it's, again, just important to kind of reinforce that the points of pride really are something that we should dig into tonight if there's time. But in terms of just looking at overall grade 3 performance in ELA, Kim, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So we can never pinpoint exactly what is happening, right? We can think about this cohort might be a little bit different. We'll get a little bit more information when they turn into fourth graders. Our Dibble scores, this was the first year that we gave our Dibble screener for third grade. And achievement overall was at the end of the year benchmark assessment was about 77% proficient. So we're thinking in terms of 77% of our kids are at little to no risk at the end of third grade. So that's the first thing to think about when we think about early reading foundational skills. The second thing to think about is where this cohort is coming from, right? This is the second cohort of students that have gone through foundations K through 3. These are our kindergartners that came to this past third grade class, are our kindergartners that came to school right after COVID shut down in masks too. So that's something to consider and think about. What I will say is I also think that when we think about reading development, we're focused really in K2 and 3 of really solidifying our phonics and our phonemic awareness, our word recognition skills, while now layering on more complex comprehension skills. And what happens is as we solidify our foundational skills and start solidifying our language comprehension skills, those all weave together into fluency, which breeds into comprehension. And I say that because if you look at our 4th and 5th grade scores, you can see how having that solid foundation of foundations moving into 4th grade, we see that jump. So I want to see this trend over the next year of like, is this a go slow to move fast? Like, are we really solidifying those foundational skills? And then we see that jump in 4th grade. Other than thinking about that cohort, the other thing that we're looking at is when I look at our peers across the state, 2 of our peers in our same DERG, Fairfield and Trumbull, both had declines in their 3rd grade score years over year too. So I don't think we're that big of an anomaly, but it'll be interesting to kind of look at that over time and see how this cohort progresses. And if we follow the same trend as the cohort before us, that went from 73% proficient in 3rd grade to 79, that big jump there, and making all those foundational skills solidified before we move on.
And I think what I would add to that is, one of the things that we messaged at the start of the school year was that we were moving the Linkit C to the beginning of the school year. So one of the things that allows us to do is it allows us to identify the pain points from the previous year or areas of refinement that teachers need to dig into and intervene early with. So we feel comfortable with the fact that we have the intervention tools to make sure that what we're saying now, which is we're not overly concerned with the overall 3rd grade scores because we are actively monitoring the progress as these students move forward. So I think that's really important. If we were to say to you, well, we're hoping for better by the time they take the SBA this year, I think you would probably want to push back on me a little bit more. But because we have other metrics that we can analyze throughout the course of the year, and because the initial metrics of using Linkit C allows us to pinpoint those deficiencies for those students, we can see course correction much quicker. So I feel good about that change.
And thus my question about looking at the cohort growth, because this grade may just have a different makeup and you'll see a huge growth score from this year to their testing next year. That's why I said
it could happen.
It's just so.
And grade 3 is also, let's remind ourselves, this is the first exposure to a standardized assessment of this level and rigor. So that entry point can sometimes be rough for kids too. Mike, did you want to speak to the 3rd grade math? You don't have to touch it.
So Kim and Mark said it pretty clearly, and you just reiterated it, Ms. Hirsch. From a 3rd grade perspective, from math, we're right at our average over the last 4 years. It's not really a drastic dip, but we have identified what we think the 3rd graders and the kids below really need, and that was a focus on fact fluency. So this year we have a new partner, Reflex, a digital partner, where we're using a computer adaptive platform to help the kids build their fact fluency, but also give the teachers information to support the students with whatever it is that they're specifically needing to work on. And what that does is it unlocks the door for problem solving, which a lot of these tests, or I should say, all of these SBA and GSS tests are really reading tests. And sometimes you get behind some of these kids and they're having to read a lot just to get to the math or to formulate the equation or the model. And so what we're trying to do is alleviate their burning of all the wood in their brain to figure out, what the facts are. They can just know that those are there and they don't have to be afraid when they see the numbers. So fact fluency is what we're focused in on, but we're not super excited one way or another about the third grade scores. Now, if they went down to 67, that would be a concern, but they're right at our average.
I'm gonna get a little granular. Just looking at the math, this still with the third grade, but following the cohort. What really stands out to me is that New Lebanon seems to be doing something right. So I just would love to hear more about what's happening there because their scores are going up both in math and in ELA. When you track the same cohort in third and fourth grade.
It just so happens that the principal of New Lebanon is here, and as much as I would like to be able to take the credit for the plan that he has instilled with his staff, I think really Dr. Dan and his staff deserves all of the credit for the hard work and for taking the risk at making some significant changes in their approach to instruction last year. So, Dr. Dan, welcome to the table.
Nice to see you all. Hi, good evening. So maybe just a little bit about how we approached math instruction last year. Yeah. Okay. Do I need to hold or are we good? Okay. So Ms. Colvin, I know that you got to visit my school last year, I think, as did a few other members of the board. And thank you so much for coming and getting to know a little bit about the things that we prioritized last year. One of the things that we highlighted for you and we saw through over the finish line was a very strategic approach to extended after school. We used a lot of our Title I money to run very short focused cycles of after school based on data that we were collecting in real time from students. So we got our hands on some of the high leverage, what are essentially practice assessments for the SBA. They're called IABs and they live right there on the platform where the students take their real assessment. So we administered those. And then every time we would administer one every several weeks, we would sit down with the teachers and look at the data, determine how teachers were going to modify instruction to meet student needs and fill those gaps in the school day. And then for those students who had more significant needs, how to invite them to a cycle of after school that focused right on like double-digit multiplication or, area and measurement, whatever that was. And then we would cycle them out. And oftentimes students, repeated cycles with us because they were perhaps a struggling mathematician or a struggling reader, but it was actually a new thing for some of our parents of on grade level students to get a call or a message home that their child was being invited to the short cycle because indeed there was a gap that they needed to have addressed, and in that way it really provided all of the students with what they needed. It got everyone the touch points that were necessary to get them over the finish line. In math, we went up 11% across the school. And actually over the last 3 years, we virtually doubled the number of students who are doing math on grade level. We were in the 30s 3 years ago, and we're now 63%. So the adoption of the curriculum and some of the other things that we put in place last year really helped make gains. We're quite proud of it and poised to continue. Thank you.
Seems you may have cracked the code for some of that achievement gap.
Thank you.
It's an issue that we've had in the past, not just us, but the world. So
I also think, Dr. Dan, it might be helpful to talk about how you strategically utilize your 2 math interventionists over at New Lebanon School.
Yeah, so the math interventionists hold dual roles. So they are, as part of the district's MTSS model, they're responsible for providing service above and beyond the Tier 1 core curriculum for students that are not meeting benchmark. But they arrange a schedule such that they can do that and push in to certain grades during the Tier 1 instruction. So they're actually in the classroom as the teacher is providing the daily lesson, pulling a group based on what students are struggling with that day's lesson, and giving them extra support in the back of the classroom, cycling them back into the whole group lesson when they're showing mastery, keeping those students who need a little bit more support over the course of potentially a couple of days. And I know that some of my colleagues are also doing a similar approach where their staffing allows, but because we're at a Title I school, we do have that second interventionist that we're very thankful to be able to utilize and leverage in that way.
Thank you. That's great. I'm just, can you give a little more context about the afternoon? Like how long are those sessions and how long do they last in terms of minutes and then like how many days or whatever?
Yeah, so the standard model we used was 6 1-hour sessions. And because like finding your most talented, effective staff to teach those, I offered a lot of flexibility. So like I had a couple of teachers who coach and they had like 2 weeks in between a season and they ran those sessions right in a row. I had other teachers who have other family obligations and they did 6 Tuesdays in a row. And then we would let the data like lead us if it was a more complex concept. And midway through, we really felt like we needed to extend that a couple more sessions. We would do that. But it was really driven by what students needed support in, and then matching them with the staff that were going to be most effective in filling that gap with the finite resources that we had.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Does anybody else have a question? I have a bunch, but I figured, no one? Sorry, you have one? No, okay. So thank you guys both, all
Okay.
3 of you for coming up, and I just think that's fantastic. I wanted to point out another section of change that I was really excited to see. Well, 2 of them. One was for special education, like the data that you showed where the students who were receiving special education programming. I know it looked as though there was only 1% of an increase in improvement in certain areas of, meeting above the expected levels. But to me, that was really exciting. It's a big win for our special education program, I think, because the number of students in special education has drastically increased over the past few years, and especially in the past year. So that 1% is a significant portion of students. So that was really impressive for me, and I just wanted to highlight that. So we had that, and then, again, we had similar discussion, similar things with some of the ELL students. So I was really impressed, and I just wanted to highlight that. And also science, since we have been hounding the science department for a long time about middle school science and elementary, I just wanted to say I was really excited to see that we've exceeded the district's goal in science. It's a really good reflection on the time and focus that we've spent revising that science curriculum over the past few years. So big kudos. I'm sure we'll get to that when we get to the curriculum management program later. But I'm sorry, I was just finding my spot. So I see Bonnie in the back. I'm going to ask a quick question about advanced learning. And it's not a specific question, but it's more, I know I've asked this in years past, and I swear I remember last year, Dr. Carol Billow taking note and saying we were going to do this, but I really wanted to thank you both for including the ALP student data in there in comparison to traditional classrooms. As we expect, they would do well. They are, a grade or 2 above, depending on the subject matter. I know I sound like a broken record, but I really, really would love to do a long-term review of the achievement data, looking at the students placed in ALP in the elementary levels, 2 through 5. I know 2 is sort of more of a push-in model now, but and compare those to the achievement data for students who joined in 6th through 8th grade and how well they compare as well to their peers in the non-advanced courses. And also look at what that impact has for those students that are joining AP and honors at the high school. Because I think it's really important for us to see, track the program from inception to graduation for those students. I know often hear parents frustrated that their student, I am one of them. I had one student who went all the way through and one that was only in one of the ALPs in elementary and did not join the other advanced programs until middle school. But it's important for us to sort of know that there are students that have special needs that need to go faster and deeper at a younger age, and some catch up. We're seeing this growth here. They don't get there till middle school and they jump in, and we don't see any negative impact for those students accessing higher level courses come high school. So I'd really love to see how those, elementary students that entered versus middle school students who entered, if you see any difference in those growth scores.
So I
The-
just
yeah.
to qualify your comment, I think what you're asking for is us to go back and track students who tested in the elementary years, but didn't get into the program, but then in the middle school got into the program, and by way of comparison, see how their counterparts did.
Yeah, again, I know we always
Okay.
have concerns shared with us by parents that their child did not get into, didn't test into the advanced learning program at the elementary level. But it's really important that, when we've talked about this, especially with special education and beyond, that there's an understanding that those students are not being kept out of advanced programs in middle school or high school. And often the students that weren't in elementary program who met and exceeded their goals in the elementary program join their cohorts in the middle school and are just as successful for those who enter in the high school level.
I think if we could, if you wouldn't mind, maybe Bonnie, you can talk briefly about the 2E work.
Oh,
Because I think that folds nicely into to where you're going.
Aware of it.
That was where I was leading.
Okay.
Ms. Hirsch, it was part of the committee that we've just launched and are in the middle of launching a Twice Exceptional Handbook that has been many years in the making. What we did was we looked at the PGC recommendations, especially recommendation 10. We looked at, and again, it's not just me, it was the SESS staff. We worked really closely together with it. And what we did was looked at exemplar other handbooks, looked at what parts of it that we wanted, and put together a draft of it. And then we had a larger committee that represented leadership, many of the people who are behind me right now, ALP teachers, SESS teachers, classroom teachers, parents were on the committee. So we had the full stakeholder group. So we had a full commitment to that. So we're in the middle of a year-long launch with it. Leadership is launching the next 2 months. And then followed by SES and ALP staff, followed by general education teachers, followed by we just scheduled the 2E SESS ALP and academic excellence PTAC collaborative meeting for January, and then there will be a Twice Exceptional focused SMORE that will be going out in February. So we're doing it. It's a full community approach that where we can help build a community of support for all of the students.
Thank you. And again, I don't know if we have it on the agenda for this year, but I assume we do, that we usually we got an ALP review last year. So, I don't know if it's coming again this year. I haven't looked at the agenda that far in advance, but it's just something to consider. I just think it really gives us an opportunity to sort of highlight the growth that all of our students, no matter what level they're at, will see. And that we don't provide roadblocks for them, that we're trying to make sure we open the gates.
I agree with you, but then I also disagree with you in one point. So I do think that there is certainly frustration on the part of parents at the elementary level when their kids don't get into the program and they firmly believe their child is ready for that level of challenge. But I think Bonnie and all of the board advisory, our building advisory committees do an excellent job of analyzing the data, talking about the student as a learner, and making those difficult decisions sometimes to say, just not yet. I think the thing that I like about the Greenwich program is there's always access down the road. So if the child doesn't qualify at the elementary level, the door isn't closed forever. And so I do think it's a wonderful thing that we're not too rigid about our entry point and that there are multiple opportunities for kids to enter into the program. Maybe later is a better opportunity for them. And we see that quite often.
Mm-hmm.
You made my point for me.
Kids grow and develop at different rates, and it's what they need right now. And
This is meeting each learner where they're at.
And since Bonnie and I talked about this morning, I think I would want Bonnie to leave the table repeating what she said to me today, which is we expect all of our ALP students on the SBA to hit the highest levels. It's just, they're always achieving and exposed to above grade level content. So when they're taking an on grade level content test, we expect them to hit a home run. What we are focused on is what, Bonnie?
the growth. So what I've done is I've looked at the growth of the students that for the kids who are in the ALP cohorts. And we are exceeding the growth for other students that are at that same level. So I look at all the level 4 students and comparatively how many students are making their growth targets, and recognize that for some of these kids, they're being tested on content that they learned 2 or 3 years ago. So they're not only learning it, but they're maintaining that.
Yep. I think it's, again, it's always important to highlight it's a great program that we have, but it doesn't take away from the rest of our incredible programs for all level of learners. Oh, Tony and then
Well,
Kathleen.
I was just gonna say, this might be a great place where, Mike, you're really good at explaining the growth rate and how Connecticut actually manages that, because when you look in here, you see growth and you also see something called APTA, and most people don't understand it. And that's really, really important to us as a district. And I think that's why we're seeing so much success, because we are keyed into that.
Yeah. So the way I like to think about it, if it's a little bit of a long explanation, but when third graders take the test the first time, they score something. And that's what the state uses to set the metric for that particular student. So we would all probably have different goals that we would have to hit at the end of the year. I might need to have 100 points of growth, and Mr. Kittle might need only 60 points of growth as determined by the algorithm by the state. So that's what you need to understand to start, so that you can first look at the growth rate, which is basically, did each individual student make their points? Yes or no, pass or fail. You either made your 60 points or you didn't. That's our growth rate. But what's really cool about Connecticut is we have APTA, which is the average percentage of target achieved. So while I might need 100 points to make my goal, I might make 80 of those points. And that would be my average points that I made for myself. Mr. Kittle might have made 65 points of growth and he only needed 60. So he's going to be above the 100%. And then we average all that together and we get our APTA score for the district, which lets us know that our kids are scoring at, on average, 70% of their targeted individual points, if that makes sense to everybody. So that allows us to see if the kid's growing relative to themselves rather than did they hit their target or not. I can see that a kiddo that, you know, needed 60 points made 85 points worth of growth. And now we can look back at what happened for that student and maybe apply that sort of experience for other students and vice versa. Really important to understand both of them. And I think we focus on the growth more so than even the achievement, because if we can see kids growing at the rate they need to, then the achievement should follow.
Thank you. I see. And then, yeah.
So following on that, I've always philosophically wondered what's the focus on getting kids from like on the SBA scores 3 to 4? Like, I feel like there's a lot on, let's get that 2 to 3, but how much of is there a focus on getting them from the 3 to the 4? Like if you were to allocate your time spent, and maybe that's to you because it goes to math and English, but I'm just philosophically wondering.
Well, I mean, I think we devote more time than the average district to that because we have our advanced learning program, right? And so we're trying to get these kids to grow into it. You know, ideally we want kids to be, one of our strategic plan goals is through algebra by the end of 8th grade. And in order to do that, we need to have you operating basically a year ahead by the time you get there. ALP would be 2 years ahead. So we have a constant focus on trying to push kids and give them access to the higher levels. So we spend a lot of time doing that. And if you actually broke down our total aggregate students, you would see we're at our highest level 4 scoring that we've ever been at in mathematics. So about half of our kids in our district, half in grades 3 through 8 score at a level 4. So that's pretty amazing. ELA, I think, is similar. So I don't want to speak out of turn with that, but so we have seen that increase year after year. So we're doing something right. And maybe it's just that we're setting a higher standard and then people are trying to achieve that standard.
I
I feel like, God forbid, we move off the elementary school and we don't have these principals come up here and they have to all, and I mean, I feel like maybe we should have maybe they all want to like just go home and not.
Oh, I
be
have high school
exposed.
questions too.
I know I have high school questions too, but I mean, I feel like I have plenty of high school questions. Ralph, get ready. But no, I'm kidding. But
Ralph is always ready.
he's always ready. But
I
I
was
mean,
wondering how you would want to handle the management of the principal points of pride, because it's hard to pass that opportunity to hear from each principal by. So
here.
I think
Yeah.
if you wouldn't mind, I think I've given them kind of strict instructions to have a 30-second elevator speech, so no one will be too long-winded for you. If you're patient, we can file each one of them
I
through.
feel like that's the right thing to do. And I mean,
I personally would welcome the opportunity for each
'Cause-
individual
Yeah.
principal to get up and share.
otherwise
their
I'm just
own-
going to, I mean, ask Mary Granville how Parkway is going since my kids left. I mean, otherwise I'm going to do, because it looks pretty awesome. I'm sorry. I
Are
mean,
you
so-
are you all amenable to that?
Laura, do you have a question first?
It's a congratulations. I feel like, we talked about third grade kind of moving down, but fourth and fifth grade ELA and math were all up. So I just feel like, I don't want to focus on the negative. I want to also acknowledge the positive
Well, and let's not.
before they run away.
Thank you for that. And let's not forget that the student is on a journey, right? And so if they're ever going to score at a lower level, we would prefer it be in third grade and not fifth grade when they're leaving us to go on to their next journey. So I think that the trajectory is certainly positive, and we're happy about that. I could have them line up in alphabetical order and we can file them right through. They're very good at the alphabet at the elementary level, or I can just try to go off the top of my
Can you
head.
line them up in size, height order?
Dr. Jones wants me to follow the order.
Yeah, because
Oh.
they can flip with you.
I was going in height order.
Yeah.
Dr. Jones, Coscob School, Mr. Gavin. Hello, everybody. You're on the clock.
So at COSCOB, as our, pride slide showed, we are really very, very happy with how things are working with our parents and students. Our survey results were super positive, and I think that is a testament to the family atmosphere we have there. I think people feel welcome. They feel like they belong. Just a quick anecdote about today. We had a student that was experiencing some emotional distress at the very end of the day. At dismissal, kids were lined up for buses, and the reaction from the empathy of the students that were all there watching this go down, the staff members that all jumped in to try to help, from our paras to our teachers who are working the bus lines, to the classroom teacher who heard what was going on and came down the hall. It was just a testament to the family that we have over at COSCOB, and it was a beautiful thing to see. And I was actually not even near that part of the building, so I heard about it secondhand. And Bonnie, even, when she walked in, it was the first thing that she said. She says, "You've got a great family over there." So really proud of that.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you.
Miss Monaco? Look at this, everybody's now.
Alphabet, okay. Oh, yeah.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for this opportunity to speak. We are super proud at Glenville, specifically over our growth over the past few years. This is really one of the first times that we've seen our level fours really over 50%, which is really significant for us in grades 4 and 5 at least. There's a lot of great things going on, and some of the exciting work that you'll hear if you come to our school is really, we talk about these 1% incremental changes throughout the course of the year. And, I tell my teachers and my students that they're all doing a really excellent job, but there's always room for improvement. And so we take that off in little manageable bites, and those bites are 1% changes to constantly improve and get better. So at every faculty meeting, we have teachers share out, what's your 1% this time? What have you done differently that's made changes? So, a little example might be a teacher said, I noticed that our transitions throughout the classroom to get our books from the cubby and back to the rug and was just taking so long. And so she decided to meet with her class, and they timed it. And throughout the course of the day, their transitions were about 15 minutes. And she had a class meeting. She said, do you think we could do better? And they were all in agreement. And so they timed their transitions for a week straight. And they cut, I think, about 8 to 10 minutes off their transitions through the course of the day. And guess what? They just got 10 minutes more of instruction every day. So just finding those little moments and times where we can analyze the data and find our room to growth, I think is where we're slowly, chipping away and demonstrating a lot of growth.
Thank you, Clara. Tyson?
Hi.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks for having me up here. I'm happy to talk a little bit about Hamilton Avenue School. I'm so proud, incredibly proud of the growth that we've seen in terms of our parent and student and staff satisfaction. It's no secret that that school had suffered a little bit through that over the past years, but we're super proud of the achievements that we've made with those metrics. This year we've tasked the staff with taking care of each other. It's something that I've learned early on in my career, that it's very important that people are taking care of each other and students are taking care of each other. So we really are emphasizing our positive behavior interventions and supports for everybody. It's no secret that we are suffering, with our data. It's not exactly where we want it to be. And we all have embraced that. We're so fortunate to have the support of the entire district coming in to work with our staff, work with our students, and to really capitalize on small moments. There are some sparks of light in our data. We are really proud of our NGSS achievement, 30 points growth in 3 years, which is the highest district-wide, which is something that we're extremely proud of. So we just are trying to work on small moves and small moments to really work on giving students exactly what they need, giving parents the tools and the power that they need as well. It's a school that of working class families who really work hard, and they put a lot of faith into what we're doing as teachers, and with the support of the staff and the people that are helping us, we are really hopeful and excited for what's to bring in the future.
Thank you, Johnson. ISD.
Good evening, everyone. As you can see from our points of pride, we have a lot to celebrate at ISD. Most proud of our ELA scores in grades 4 and 5. For the first time over a 4-year trend, both grades 4 and 5 scored over 90%, which is an incredible achievement. Something also to celebrate is our growth scores for both grades 4 and 5. They were number 5 and number 3 in the state. And our ELA scores were number 1 in the state for grade 4 and number 3 for grade 5. If you ask what caused that, it's not just one set thing. At ISD, we are an IB school. And at our school, we talk a lot about student agency and what student agency looks like. And we often refer to it as a bicycle. And everybody does their part. We have our parents who are the pedals. We have our teachers who are the frame of the bike. Our students are the handlebars driving the direction, and the stakeholders are the wheels. So everybody is accountable for their individual parts to keep that bicycle moving forward. And we really attribute our transdisciplinary learning through our IB framework that is attributed to our success.
Thank you,
Thank
Dana.
you.
Julian Curtis.
Good evening. I am the new and proud principal of Juliet Curtis, Eduardo Calderon. Nice to meet you guys. Thank you for this opportunity. I am excited to continue some of the traditions that are part of the fabric of Julian Curtis, one of them being the ringing in ceremony, which we participated in a few weeks ago, where we officially welcome our kindergartners into our learning community. I took the liberty of bringing in myself, since I am also new and officially starting with the learning community. I can't take credit for all of the great things that have been happening at Julian Curtis prior to me coming, but I do want to celebrate the fact that we have had great growth. In this past year, we had an increase in ELA SBA scores exceeded our SBA goals by 3%. And we had a 9% increase in comparison to the year prior. Math, same thing. We had a 9% increase. And so I'm looking forward to continuing some of the good things some of the good practices that are already in place and deepening that and building on that. One of the ways in which we are going to continue to do that is expanding close reading through grades 3 to 5, building thinking classrooms in grades 3 to 5, and also number corners that is going all the way through from K to 5 in our building. And we're looking forward to what we're very well known for also, which is our UN parade, which is actually happening next week. So we're excited about that. Thank you
very much.
I also just wanted to say welcome. Look forward to the opportunity for us to come visit you at over JC. See how things are going.
Dr. Russo is coming back up.
Yes, hi, everyone. Thanks again. So I am really so grateful to be at the helm of New Lab. We had a really wonderful year last year. For those of you that know the school, you know it's filled with really, really hardworking people, as are all of the schools across town. Last year, I asked the teachers to work differently or on different things, and we had some growing pains along the way, but really nothing fuels that work more than seeing the success of the fruits of their labor. I already got a chance to share with you that we saw the student outcomes increase, which are obviously the most important metric that we track. But we also did see our parents and student surveys go up as well. We have a model of inviting parents in one Friday a month to participate in a lesson alongside their students. That'll be tomorrow morning. If any other members of the board are in Byram, feel free to join us around 8:30. And we usually get like between 100 and 150 parents. It's really great. And then a lot of work this year we're doing around student belonging. I think that New Lab is such a wonderful, nurturing place for students. And I don't know that the number that comes out on the survey is really reflective of the amount of support and care that the students get there. So we're working as a staff. We did some work yesterday at the faculty conference around digging into student responses last year to think about how we could draw them closer into our circle and get them to feel more connected to the school community. So that's what we're working on this year.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Ms. Ramirez.
Hi, everybody. So at North Miami, our numbers are what they are, but what our focus, Ms. Stowe, is going to be what you talked about. It's on the growth, and it's on we have good things in place for our students that are, moving along from 1s to 2s, but it's the 3s that we're looking to push to the 4s. And we're also looking at those kids who did not get into ALP, but still have the ability to be a 4. How are we going to do that? We're going to continue what we've been doing. We have a tremendous support, as do all the schools, from Mark's team. Mike, through math, has set us up for building thinking classrooms. Come anytime you want. We're on board. It's running very well, particularly in our 5th and 4th grade. And it's now in our 3rd grade. Kim and I have already looked at data from the SBA and the benchmark C for this year to decide how to move forward. Kim also has provided us with a lot of PD for the new units of study last year in reading, and this year in writing. We're set up and ready to go for that. And lastly, our science scores were excellent, but we always strive to be better. So with Tara, we look at every unit that we're doing. Tara is available to our teachers at any time that they can work with her. They can work on units. They can look at data with her. They can talk about all the resources that we have available to us, which we live in a very generous district and we have a lot of things that can be used. So for North Miami, it's continuing that. And with the help of the coordinating team and with Mark's support as well, we will be able to look at our scores next year for growth and see better growth.
Thank you very much. Ms. Flood?
Good evening, thank you. I would also like to share that at North Street, our focus has been on trying to continue to grow our level 3s to level 4s, as well as getting all of our students to level 3. So some of our points of pride this year were that 58% of our students in grades 3 through 5 were advanced in ELA and math. With a highlight being 4th grade, 64% of the students were at advanced in ELA. And in 4th grade, in math, 94% were at level 3, which was actually one of the highest according to Mr. Reed in the state, but because it could potentially be identifiable, it was not in the locker. So that was something that we were very, very excited about. And 62% of those students were also at advanced. So we are continuing to move our level 3s to level 4s. And we are using everything that Ms. Ramirez spoke about, the coaches, the math coordinators, reading, everybody's coming in to support, but we're also using the IXL diagnostic data and using station rotations where the teachers are actually breaking their math blocks down into smaller segments after the whole class lesson, teaching the new learning for the day. The students are breaking into groups and they're rotating through different stations, working on either a reteaching if they need that, some skill building for prior skills that they still need work with, or enrichment so that we can meet the needs of the students who are in need of extra support, as well as those who are ready to move forward and to accelerate a little bit. So those stations are really helpful in meeting the needs and differentiating for everybody within the math classroom. So that was something that we were really proud of. In addition to our parent survey, which was extremely high, we had 100% of our parents feeling welcomed at the school and like partners in learning, which we've been working on for the past few years. So we were very proud of that as well.
Thank you, Ms. Flood.
Thank you.
Dr. Bencivengo.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. We're so proud of so much at OG, and it's a true partnership. So my assistant principal and I are a team as the instructional leaders of the building. I'm blessed that she was a math teacher at Central and I was a language arts teacher at Central. So we each take a niche and work with that with our students and our teachers. And we've seen great success, particularly this year with fourth grade, which when you do a 9-year look back, you'll see that our fourth grade typically hasn't made the kind of growth that they made this year. So I think that is in large part due to the fact that they were the first class that came through having foundations consistently. We implemented Heggerty early with them. We implemented geodes with them. And then we have a real targeted approach to close reading. And we had a great focus on that this year. Because of the great work that we saw with our close reading, our theme this year is getting even closer. And we're focusing on close math and close reading and close relationships. And that close math has allowed us to work on developing a math lab where our students are using the building thinking classrooms with our math specialist beginning in kindergarten and focusing on really targeted, deeper thinking of math word problems and recognizing that the benefit that we had in the close reading really is helping with that. As a community, it's an incredible community, and I would be remiss if I didn't invite you all to the pumpkin patch this weekend, where I will be in the dunk tank called the Pitch Burst at 12:30. You're welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Bencivengo. Ms. Granville.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So this is my 8th year as principal at Parkway School, and I'm proud to say our enrollment is the highest it's been since I came to Parkway. And I think it's not only because people did leave the city and came to backcountry. I think it's because our school is a destination. We have families that are transferring from private school to our school because they see that we have a standard of excellence. We're a school of distinction, and we just keep getting better and better. If you look at our SBA scores in math and English language arts, we've gone up in all areas for the last 3 years. Our growth scores were out of the park. In math, we went from 56% growth rate in 2022 to 64% growth, and then in ELA from 49 to 68. And then if we looked at some of our cohorts, we were above the 70 percentage mark. And how did we get there? Because we look at every child. We have MTSS, which is a really wonderful strategy for looking at kids' growth, tracking where they are, and then deciding what do we need to do to move them along their trajectory. And again, it's not just the children who are not meeting goal, it's the 3s to the 4s. We want every child to make growth. In the end, our kids are going to pass these tests, but we want to make sure that every child is moving along and making the growth that they deserve to make and can make. I think we also have looked very closely at our DIBELS that we had last year, the Linkit scores, the SBA scores. We use all the data that's available to us to really figure out what children can do and where their deficits may lie, and then how do we use our resources in the building to be able to support them. So again, that they can really succeed to the fullest. Being at a small school, again, we're not the smallest anymore, but we are small enough. And I think that is an advantage that we know every child. Our teachers know the kids very well. And we have the resources in place and the curriculum materials in place, and high standards in place to make sure that kids get to where they need to go.
Thank you very much. One more to go. Riverside. Good evening, everyone. How are you all this evening? Jason Martin, the very fortunate principal of Riverside. I first want to just say thank you. It's the first time I'm getting to meet you all. And I am honored to represent Riverside here this evening. So I can't claim any credit for obviously this past year, the science scores, which were phenomenal, the math growth scores, and then of course the parent connection. I'm not surprised considering all I've learned this year. We have one of the most engaged families that I've ever had in my experience, and it's been wonderful. They have definitely given me a great deal of information and learning. Our science scores and our math scores, and just I think historically the success of this school is largely because of this parent population and how engaged they are and how much they give to the school. The amount of enrichment and things that go on in this school is incredible, and it pushes the kids forward. And there's no surprise to me that you didn't see the results yield in the science scores, and obviously the family connection scores. But for me, moving forward, my charge, right, is to make sure that school is the best part of a kid's day. And the way that we do that is through the adults all adhering and kind of doing what Mark mentioned earlier today about having a common vision. And our focus this year is around the technical term of collective efficacy and action. But really, it basically is if you get a group of adults together, if they believe they can, they will. And all of the adults are zeroing in on what professional learning communities are supposed to look like. And if you have to inspect what you expect. And so if we want to make sure that our results move forward, right, Mary and I both make sure that we are in planning meetings every week. My background and expertise is in math and science. Hers is in reading, literacy, and in that area. And so we split the burden, and she works with the teachers and plans with them all ELA. I sit and work with them with math. And we have some really good conversations. Teachers are getting vulnerable. They're talking about how things should look, how building thick in classrooms should look. And it's I believe that if we focus on this over the course of the year, we are going to see the growth that is expected. So we're excited. Thank you very
Last
much.
but certainly not least, for sure. And we look forward to coming and visiting you as well.
Please do.
And all of our principals this year.
Where would you like to go next?
The next one is Central.
Oh, you want
No,
to?
no, I was gonna say, does anybody have questions on middle school if you want to do that, or
Right.
before we
I was with you.
jump in? And it's always good to end on the upswings for each area.
Yeah, that would have been helpful.
Well, while Kathleen's looking, I did want to point out another positive that I saw in math, grades 3 through 8 at the very least. Not just math, but in some of the other areas, but particularly there, when we were looking at our deltas in comparison to similar cohorts, those in DERG A and B, even though DERGs don't exist anymore. I was really pleased to see that our delta specifically in math was higher than those in all of the high achieving districts, and higher than at least one of the two in our similar DERG. So I thought that was a really big thing to celebrate, and wanted to just, again, all about pointing out the good stuff. So Kathleen, did you get there?
Who are we going to need to bring to the table for this one?
Science, advanced
Fogel.
science. First of all, agree. I love the comps. So thank you for putting that. I always say that because it does show. And I know you're right. We don't have the DERGs anymore, but it's helpful to see how we have very different demographics than many of the districts in Connecticut, and we're right there, if not beating them. So that is impressive. But, we spent a lot of time talking about ALP, in elementary school. And then we look at, and of course, everyone, we expect it to be at a level 4, right? And I would think the concept should be the same in middle school. And it's not, right? And I have a sense that it's a reflection of the fact that, I mean, what is the percentage, I guess, of our student body that is in advanced science?
Yeah, we do have more sections of advanced science than we do have of advanced ELA in comparison. We have similar number of sections as our advanced math population because we have a single or double or sometimes triple jump tracks for math. So if you look at all of those sections, they're more comparable to that of science. But the science NGSS score is a one-time test in 8th grade. It's 18 questions. There are 47 available standards that can be addressed at any time. We never know what's going to be assessed. It's a very quick dipstick of achievement. And we as a district believe that our science students who show a propensity for advancement have skills outside of that singular 18 question, multiple choice, drop down, fill in the blank test. A science student who is advanced is a thinker, they're creative, they're problem solving, they're project based, and we are confident about the students that we place in advanced science. And we don't consider the NGSS to be a singular metric as determining someone's success for placement in there or for their worthiness to be in that class. It's the chicken or the egg. Do we put a student into advanced because they can pass the NGSS test? Or do we look at NGSS scores as a predictive indicator of success on advanced science? We have a continuum of the science and engineering practices that we use at the end of 5th grade in our placement BACs when we place into the advanced track in 6th grade. Parents can see this. We have those conversations when we do those placements. We don't have the 5th grade NGSS scores when we make those determinations. So we're not necessarily using that data. We're looking at ELA SBA and math SBA 4th grade scores that are available to us. We have GPS benchmark data available to us when we place in 6th grade, which puts students on a track, but we don't have a test score from 5th grade NGSS to use at that point. We monitor progress throughout middle school. Some students stay in the advanced track. Some students' needs are met better outside of the advanced track, but the NGSS is just one 18 question test on a single day in May. It's not as worthy as these STEM projects that you're seeing in your own kitchens and what's actually happening in the classroom.
And remind me, because we've gone back and forth a lot on middle school advanced science. It is in fact a different curriculum, or it's just, I thought it wasn't.
It's an enriched curriculum with additional high school level standards and assessment opportunities in grades 6 and 7, as well as additional STEM experiences. So additional units for advanced students happen in the school day in their homogeneous separated courses from their on-level peers. In 8th grade, it's a bit more rigorous. We do have multiple high school standards from earth science and physical science brought into the 8th grade advanced curriculum. And those are the standards that historically students may not have enough experience with by the time they hit the 11th NGSS test. So we put those, front load those up into the 8th grade advanced course.
Chair, I think it might be helpful to the board to remind them why we don't take a vast departure from the on-grade level standards and why it's critical that we cover those even in the advanced class.
Yeah, the NGSS is a spiraling curriculum. So we have 3 different disciplines of science, and we have a little bit of each discipline in each year. It's not linear where we can go and speed through to new contents. There's only the 47 standards that exist in the middle school. That's all that's available to us. We cover all of those standards to make sure they're available to our students by the time that they take that NGSS test. But it wouldn't behoove us to go and do biology standards within 8th grade and move it that way. We just touch on the assessment boundaries in the performance expectations, which is the NGSS way of saying standards, because they needed a different term.
And not that I would ever be critical of the state or what it provides to us, but I think Ms. Fogel's being kind when she says that the NGSS test is simply not a good measure of what we think a good scientist can do.
Yeah, it's limited. Science is hands-on and the test is on a computer. It's just different. It's a different understanding of student ability, critical thinking, and skills over time.
A performance-based assessment would be much more authentic.
Mark's opening up himself
But
to
as we
grade all
start-
of those.
As I say, as we certainly know, tests are only a window into one, moment in time for them. That's why we look at all.
At the end of 8th grade, which is a window, and they'd rather have their own windows open to field trips and whatnot.
Does anybody else have middle school questions? No? Personally, I'd love to hear about the successes of, no, yes, no. I'd love to hear about the successes and the points of pride of our middle school principals.
Sure. Why don't we bring Mr. Healy up? We'll go right in order. Central Middle School.
Hello, everyone. I thought about putting just a picture of the new building on one slide and leaving it at that, but I thought I should add some other things in there. That is obviously our greatest point of pride, and we would like to thank you all for all the support, as well as everybody else who's been actively involved. Obviously, Ms. Constant has been very involved as well. No, what you'll see is that for our points of pride, we've focused a lot on math and science over the last few years. When I took over a while back, our ELA scores were always really the ones that were the strength. So we put a lot of energy and focus into math and science, and we've gotten some good returns there. We now realize we need to balance and shift our focus to make sure that we're locked in on everything. But what's been really great about, as you see, I was glad Mr. Reed explained APTA earlier to you, because that was one of our points of pride. And Mike and I have worked very closely with our math teachers on the collaboration and their work with the data that they have in front of them, IXL Diagnostic, and how they're using that to organize students in the classroom. What's wonderful about that is that actually even this year is spreading into other departments, and our ELA teachers, since they have access to IXL as well, are starting to wonder how the IXL diagnostic for ELA works, and they're seeing a lot of correlation there and how they can use that with their students for more tier 1 instruction, but also really tier 1 intervention, getting kids into targeted groups to help them work on the skills that they need. So we're very excited to see what work is going to come there. Science with Ms. Vogel as well. Obviously, our 8th grade science teachers are very proud of the work that they're doing with our students in that snapshot, and certainly getting them excited after DC and before they leave middle school forever to take a test is always an achievement in and of itself. But finally, I also have to acknowledge the amazing sports program that exists at Central Middle School, and the 4 of 9 banners that the smallest middle school has taken home in this last year, because I used to be teased by some prior principals at other schools for my blank gym walls. And now I do not have blank gym walls. And honestly, the reason why I bring that up, though, is actually because it's really the participation in extracurricular activities. We have our math and science teams on our slide. We have our sports teams. We are really excited about how active our students are in life beyond just the classroom. And that is really important, and also shown in our survey results from parents and students. And are we meeting the needs of our kids, and are we a good fit as a school? That participation has increased exponentially. And so we are very proud of all aspects of what is happening at Central, especially our new building that is to come.
Thank you, Mr. Healy. Eastern Middle School.
Good evening, everybody. It's an honor to be here and talk about Eastern Middle School. I think what I would like to share, that it was really important for us as a high achieving school, which historically we've been, really to make sure that our focus was really on not only the achievement, but on student growth and what that means for every student. So one of the things that we really focused on this year was really making sure that we had a very clear mission and purpose. And those tenets were really going to support long-term for our school to continue to improve. So we're really proud, and I think we can echo some things that you heard from Riverside, that we have a belief that what adults do is meaningful if it's purposeful. And conversely, if we fail to do something, it's going to have an impact on kids, so that we have that ownership and responsibility. So putting growth in the forefront, we want to make sure that we're utilizing data, that we had data accessible to our teachers. And we just weren't talking about achievement, because that's just not enough. We want to make sure that all of our students are growing. So as we looked at how we utilize data and give teachers data at the beginning of the year, that was really important for us. So all of our teachers know in ELA and in math what their students' growth targets are, and how they work with that throughout the year when they're working in their team-based meetings, when we're talking about interventions that students need, that's data and information that's in front of them. So it's just not about that achievement piece. So we really wanted to make sure that we were really super focused on those things that are going to allow us to to excel. Giving data for teachers to take a look at that cohort data. So what I wanted to share with at least as a point of pride, that 8th grade class that just left us in May saw not only improvements in achievement, but improvement in growth over the course of their 3 years. And it's really important what our 6th grade teachers do and build upon with 7th grade and 8th grade. All those components together are extremely important. It's a point of celebration, not just for our 8th grade teachers, but the time and effort and commitment that all our teachers put into. That's the sum of all that sort of effort. So looking at that in a different way, and we're really, really proud of the growth that we saw and the achievement. As it comes to that 8th grade class, which Mr. Mayo now has in his school, number 2 in the state in achievement in science, number 2 in the state in ELA, and number 2 in state in math. And that's significant in terms of the focus that's there. That is supported. It's just not one teacher. It's just not one thing. It's the incredible support that we have in the building from our program leaders, the work that they do with individual teachers to really make sure that our teachers have the materials, the resources necessary to make sure that that focus is sustained. So it's just not one thing, but that was a pretty significant point of pride. And in 7th and 8th grade, we do a really, really good job too when we look at the other middle schools in the state, but our focus was on that. And then finally, really important for us to work on is our connections and relationships with our families. We have a very supportive PTA, and it was really important that we were transparent. We opened our doors to our PTA, and that relationship was really developed and sustained. And it's a really good point of pride for us that we have some really good things going on in our school moving forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Western.
Evening. Oh, sorry, West Side. So thank you for the chance. So there are so many things that we're super proud at Western. We do recognize that our kids do come into the school with not performing at the same levels in a lot of schools, but we truly believe that it's our responsibility for them to grow as much as they can in the time that they're with us, and that we are their biggest advocates. We're proud of our scores, and our English scores have been going up for many years. But we are focusing more this coming year on working on our math scores and helping our kids advance as much as they can. And what I love about Western and our staff is they're constantly looking to see how can we get our kids to move up to a higher level. Our kids aren't often represented in the higher level courses as they go on, and we feel that we have to advocate for them. So that's our goal, and the way we do that is by just thinking outside the box and meeting our kids where they're at. So for instance, in math, we're working on pushing our kids that we feel have potential to be in an advanced class into an advanced class by 8th grade by building in supports within the day to give them those extra supports that they need. Besides academically what we're doing, growth mindset is our motto at Western. And the 2 things that really help us with that is our AVID school-wide systems. We're very close to being recognized at the national level based on what we're doing, and we're really excited about that. And that allows our kids to learn the skills about advocacy, their student behaviors, the growth mindset, setting goals to help them be successful. Another thing that we're really proud of at Western is our work with restorative practices. We're in year 3. So we are a little bit ahead of some other schools, and we've seen such an impact on how our teachers build relationships with our kids, how the kids are involved when, like all middle school students, I tell parents do, they make some poor choices once in a while, but how do they work to restore relationships and recognize their part in it and how they can learn from their mistakes? All of those for the kids at Western are really important for us to get the full potential and the full growth. So we see them as a whole child. We're super proud also of our survey results with our parents, our students, and our staff. We do lead on the secondary level, and we put a lot of work into building collaborative relations with our parents, communicating with our parents, and working as a team. So we're really excited for the years to come. We're on a good track. We're excited for progress.
And you have fields.
And oh my gosh, and the fields. It's been 8 years, I forgot. We are super excited for the fields, and we're gonna have the biggest field day, I think, ever known to Greenwich Public Schools. We want to do like a Saturday one. Yeah, we have a lot of plans, so we're really excited.
If I can be there, I will personally be coming in and
Well, I expect you. to be-
monitoring the,
None
you
of
know.
your children got to use the field, right?
I know. So I'm going to be, you know, the proxy for all those students.
Okay, what's next?
Can I ask you a quick question on the middle school? There is, I don't know if it's just at Central, are there all the middle schools where the schedule has changed? And so at the end of the day, right now, instead of an AB, we're actually like, we're rotating and teaching.
No,
just you.
just, yeah.
Oh, okay. I was wondering if that was something specific. Okay, if, and how that was affecting things positively or negatively. Okay, that's fine then.
It's been a real privilege to take over supervision of Mr. Mayo. And as you can see, he's still not taking direction very well because I did not call him to the table yet. But since he's invited himself to
it's the
join
drill.
us,
It's okay.
ask him some really hard questions.
Mark, I just want to let you know the Yankees are up 5-3, bottom of the ninth. Anyway,
I don't know if anybody else has high school questions, but I have a quick SAT question. So. Yeah, I'm not sure I want to ask people to do an SAT question because I probably would fail too. So for SAT ELA, I know you shared the proficiency data with students of high needs, but not the entire grade. So I would really love to see that comparison as well.
Can you say that one more time?
I'm pretty sure on page 39, SAT ELA.
Yeah.
Maybe I missed it, but I looked twice. I only saw the ELA for high need students. Did I miss it? Did I miss a slide?
it's in there.
Okay, well then I feel like an idiot. So, but more importantly, I'll go back and look. I didn't see it.
Bridget, do you want to come up?
It's on the local district comparison for ELA SAT. Oh,
42.
okay. So it's in the,
Okay. Let's see. 43.
well then, pardon me, because maybe my thing stuck, but I could have sworn I didn't see it. So I apologize for
5.1
mine.
plus delta.
Okay. I'll get back to you on that question then. But the other one I was going to ask was for the SAT for math. I know you mentioned, that we had an increase in PSAT scores for the younger grades, but a drop in SAT math scores. So you noted that the change is based a lot, and I would agree with you on the format of the SAT and being it's given now digitally, and also the questions increase.
Adaptive.
Yes, and it's adaptive in rigor as they produce positive responses, correct responses, I should say. So I know that we didn't meet our specific goal, but I do think it's really important to note that our delta is much lower than all of those of the other high achieving districts, and every single district we compared ourselves to went down. And I do assume that's based on the change in the SAT presentation. It's a lot easier to read on digital format than do math on a computer. So I was just sort of wondering, we've seen an increase in the PSAT scores. So, in the early grade, well, 9th and 10th. Yeah. So are we going to be doing anything different with those students in the years forward to sort of help improve the math scores there? Or what do you attribute to that?
That's a great question, Karen. We are, last year, about 100 of our students did not take the PSATs in their junior year. And we are paying for everyone to take the PSAT this year so that we have the data from those tests so that we can work on their strengths and weaknesses as we move towards the March school day SAT. So we have a plan in place. Just and if we had, I think if we had those scores in hand, our teachers would have you would have seen the results that we would like to have seen.
Yeah, I'd just like to add two additional things. Certainly, there were minor changes in the expectations in the new digital SAT. One of them is a greater emphasis on Algebra 2 concepts. So one of the things that we do look back to is the percentage of students who will take Algebra 1 in 8th grade. That's a pretty good indicator to as far as our students will do when it comes to the SAT. So something for us to think about, kind of that cause and effect piece. The other thing, to Mr. Mayo's point, our teachers are really drilling down individual students. And so we did see quite a bit of growth across all students, not all students were able to hit the level 3, which is approximately a 520, 530, depending upon any given year with the state. So that is a pretty considerable score, but it certainly won't hold us back from pushing our students and certainly our teachers and helping more and more students get to that threshold. And then finally, I'll just add, as I've shared in the spring and most recently at our curriculum summit a few weeks back, we are making a greater emphasis on the pre-AP program that the College Board has put forward in Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. So this is the first year that we're exploring those curriculums, and we hope with that resource and access to those test banks that we'll do even a better job at making sure our students see SAT-like questions at an earlier age. So it may take us a couple of years, but I'm very optimistic that we're on a great trajectory and we're working really hard to even see better improvements.
I was pleased to see the positive scores in the AP. This is our first year with the pre-calculus AP course. And those students, you said on the majority hit a 4 and above. That's fantastic. So I do want to give you kudos. It's not all about the negative.
Well, thank you to the board for encouraging us and supporting us. We were, I believe, the only school in the state that did pre-AP. I'm sorry, pre-calculus AP. We had 189 students take the exam. 166 got a 5 or better, or 5. So, and all students passed. And so we had a 4.87 average, which I believe was pretty incredible. So I thank those 5 teachers that took that work on. That was a 3-year process. Again, it started with all of you here at the board level, encouraging us and supporting us. And you know, certainly our students are the beneficiaries of that great experiment. And now just about every other district in the state has been in contact with us to imitate what we've done.
It's nice to be the leader.
Yes.
In fact, the teachers and the students said that our previous curriculum was harder than the AP curriculum that they were given. So our kids were ready.
Does anybody else have a high school question? Sophie?
I'm just looking at the SAT data. I'm looking at page 43. You're just seeing that the free and reduced lunch population is, you know, lagging behind significantly. I'm wondering if you could talk about how you're supporting them.
Well, I think
Yeah. Yeah, that's not.
as I said before, we are going to pay for every student to take the PSAT so that we can figure out where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are, and drill down and make sure that they score higher than they've been scoring previously. One of the things that, I mean, our points of pride are amazing, and that was last year. And my focus is on this year, and my focus is on those high need students, and all of our teachers' focus is on those high need students because they need as much attention and support. They need more attention and support than the rest of our kids, and we're going to give it to them. The goals that teachers have set during the first couple of months of school are focused on those students. And we're going to be working hard to make sure that those scores go up. But it's not about scores. We want those kids to be able to leave the high school with all the measures and the vision of the graduate, go on to have successful careers, go on to a beautiful post-secondary education and a successful career. And that's what we're working towards. That's what Greenwich High School is all about. It's not about this. It's about making those kids become successful in life. And I think that's what's that's what's missing in our Points of Pride presentation. We're very proud of what we accomplished, don't get me wrong, but I mean, we have areas where, such as the one you just brought up, Soph, plus the other areas where there's a couple of our surveys that were abysmal in my estimation. So we're going to be working hard in those 2 areas as well. Our parents love us, but our teachers and students are, yeah. No, our student measure is connection to an adult, and we want to get that measure higher than it should be. Our teachers are feeling the impact of different things that have happened at the school. So we're going to get them there, and we're working hard with our one of our committees, which is works on professional learning, but also on bringing back our great climate, which Sean and Lucy are chairing to help with that. But those are the two things that we want to work on, along with, as I said, the high needs students that are in our school. I was a high needs student myself at Greenwich High School. And then all of a sudden I went to college and I wasn't anymore. But I got the education at Greenwich High School that I needed, especially in my junior, senior year, that made me become a very successful person in college. My children, my own children, if you looked at their what was it, their CMT scores, that's how old they are. If you would have thought that, okay, these kids aren't going. Three out of my four children have 2 advanced degrees alone. So it's not about scores. It's about work ethic. It's about being able to fail and get up and try and try and try again. It's about all those things that we don't measure, but it's about all those things. It's about getting up and fighting and fighting and fighting. And that's what we want to have our kids do. The first day of 9th grade, I tell the kids that to come in, you're coming into a school with a tradition of excellence in all aspects of high school. And that's the thing that we keep reminding them all 4 years, every semester. This is a place where excellence is, and you can do it. And we give them the resources, and we have the resources for them to make sure that they can become excellent. The other thing that we're working on again, and we've worked on that with Dr. Jones this summer, was to improve our attendance, and also to improve the mental health of our students, which is a big issue in not just our school, but in all schools across the state of Connecticut and across the United States. So those are the things that we're working on. It's nice to have these beautiful pictures and wonderful scores, but this is a building that needs continuous improvement, and that's what we're going to give you.
I was going to say, since we did, I didn't interrupt the clapping because it deserves it, but I just also wanted to acknowledge, I think it's amazing to see the increase in every single AP score this year. I mean, you know, these students are working really hard, but that doesn't always equate to a 3 or 4 on the APs. This year, we've seen an increase of students enrolled, and those scores went up. It's great. And I also wanted to acknowledge, I think it's amazing the work that we're doing at the high school and throughout the district on making a lot of our courses early childhood, early college experiences, and connecting with that. I know we have 32%, you mentioned, for UConn of the 11th and 12th graders enrolled in courses that will also give them college credit. But I know we have some new ones coming this year, and maybe it's not at UConn, but I think it's with another.
We have some courses with
retirement?
Southern Connecticut that are also dual enrollment. We have courses with Norwalk Community College that are dual enrollment. Those courses are amazing, and anyone can take those courses. So just as
Me?
anyone can
Can I
take
take
it.
them?
Yes, Mrs. Hirsch, we'd invite you down to, you probably like video production, wouldn't you? The other thing that I was going to mention, and I didn't, was that Greenwich High School made the AP honor roll. We were at the gold standard this year. Next year, the next level up, and the highest level is the platinum level. We're going to make that next year. And we also received recognition for accessibility to the AP tests. So that was a nice, especially the accessibility award. That was a nice honor for us.
I was just curious about the, I believe it was the AP US government trajectory was like, there were more students taking the test and the scores were up like a point in 2 years. Is that, is there, I was just curious if there's any anecdote behind that, or like when you see a performance improvement that big, what caused that?
Well, I mean, yeah, she could answer the question better than I, but it's most of the time the teachers go back and look at the questions that students had the hardest time with, and then they'll focus on those questions the following year so that we can do better on the assessment.
But I imagine all the teachers do that, but that one in particular was just like a skyrocketing up.
Luce?
So College Board has changed their approach to scoring. So that led to a boost in a lot of the scores across the board.
Yeah.
Well, just for social studies or in general?
No, in general, courses in other programs as well.
Hard to say, it's year one.
Not every course.
Is it online?
Yes.
One other question I was just curious about. How much of the achievement data and all this stuff do you tie to to individual teacher level? Like, is there, I imagine it's kind of a controversial thing, but is there tracking of saying like, wow, in the same way that you aggregated for the schools going, this teacher has great performance and this teacher has weak performance? Does that analysis and conversation happen?
It happens within the walls of the school. So the building principal and the assistant principal will look at data by individual teacher, and they'll look at historical performance. Sometimes grade level changes are based on that historical performance. Sometimes instructional coaching is added because of historical performance, whether it be providing teachers opportunity to new professional learning experiences because they seem to, let's say there's three fourth grade classrooms, and two of those fourth grade classrooms have very similar scores, but one fourth grade classroom year over year continues to be 10 points lower. Well, the building principal then would call me and say, so we want to do something to support this fourth grade teacher. What is the area of concern? So the area of concern is mathematics. Mr. Reed goes over to that classroom and helps that teacher build their capacity to do a better job with mathematics instruction. So to answer your question shortly, yes, we know exactly how our teachers are performing with the students in front of them. And I think what's really great is that, you know, teachers themselves can track their own performance. And I think nobody's a better critic of their performance than themselves. And I think the one thing we haven't recognized tonight, which I think we should, is the 900 plus educators that support all of the work of our building leaders. Because, you know, my job isn't to blame, it's to build capacity. And if there's anybody to blame, it's always going to be me, because I'm the one who ultimately makes all of the decisions about the curriculum changes that we make and the recommendations we bring to you. I'm the one that leads the principals. I'm the one that leads the coordinator team. So if there's blame to be had, the person that should be blamed is me when we're underperforming. But the people we need to build are the people out in the schools, because the more that we support the people out in our schools, the better our outcomes will be.
I'm glad to know I wasn't the only one that missed something this evening, because I did say thank you to the teachers and our support staff when I opened this section. I don't know Wendy if she's on, but I know she had said she had a question as well. Wendy, you there?
I am. I'm here. I do have a
Okay,
question.
and then Cody will follow. Yeah.
Thanks, Karen. Thank you so much for all your hard work and the presentation, and all the district. I can see that the district has made some really nice gains at some of the schools. But when you look at the district as a whole, that's kind of what I'm looking at. I'm looking at English and math achievement are almost back to the same levels that they were 5 years ago. So what's our achievement improvement plan, and when should we expect growth, like meaningful growth? Because we're kind of stagnant when you look at the district as a whole.
So thank you for the question. I think one of the things that I want to talk about and clarify is we're a very diverse district. And although the state doesn't recognize the distinctions of DERG A and DERG B anymore, we like to be able to compare ourselves to similar districts. But I think if we're going to be honest and have a transparent conversation, of our 11 elementary schools, for example, not all of them emulate a DERG A profile. Many of them are a DERG B profile. Some of our elementary schools are not even a DIRG B profile, but we always hold them to that standard. So I think when we talk about overall district performance, I think the numbers are a little bit misleading, and I think you really do have to delve into each individual school and hold each individual school accountable for their achievement and their progress. And there certainly are schools that are not performing at a level that we would expect. You may have heard the term, it's out in the community that I've identified 6 schools as our priority schools this year. What does it mean to be a priority school? It simply means that as a district, we need to prioritize the human resources that are available to our teachers and our instructional leaders in the buildings. And what we do is we intently schedule opportunities for on-demand professional learning with teachers. We schedule planning sessions, data analysis sessions. We have our coordinator teams out working with the building leaders, providing effective feedback to the teachers from an instructional lens and an evaluative lens. And so, I think what you heard from all of the principals is how much they rely on the coordinator team. Well, they're a small but mighty group. We have 11 elementary schools and 3 middle schools that they serve. And so in order to signal to some of the other schools that this year in particular, we are going to prioritize some schools over others, it's simply based on the historical trends that I'm not happy with at some of our schools that I think we can do better at. There are 3 things that influence achievement, and I've talked about this before. You have to have a quality curriculum in place, and we'll talk about the curriculum management plan in a little while, but we've done an incredible amount of work in the last 4 years since I've been here on overhauling our curriculum. The second thing that is important is you have to hire instructional leaders that are effective. And I think Dr. Russo was a perfect example of when you bring someone in with a fresh perspective who asks and challenges their staff to think differently, and you get better results. And the third thing, and the most impactful thing, and I've talked about this a number of times, all of the data and research supports this. The single most important factor in moving students' performance forward is building the capacity of our teachers. And how do we do that? We do that by bringing the people in who are content experts and having them work shoulder to shoulder with those teachers, meeting them where they are and moving them forward. And so that is our approach. And we will be relentlessly unforgiving with that approach until we see better results.
Okay, thank you. And so when do you think we might begin to see some meaningful growth?
Well, I think, Wendy, if you look through the 108 slides, there's many pockets that show that we are influencing favorable changes. And I'd be happy to sit with you and go through each of those slides and point them out to you.
Thank you, Mr.
You're welcome. Mr. Kittle, you had a follow-up?
Yeah, just on the, could we get, maybe the next time this is done, or I'd be very curious to know the data around the teacher performance, particularly on the schools. Like, it would be, I think it also helps contextualize the scoring if we say, oh, this school has, by your tracking or whatever the time that you mentioned, like a number of teachers that are on performance plans versus this one that doesn't, because I think it helps explain might help explain some of the variation. I just feel like teachers are such an important input in all of this, but then none of the data ties to the teachers. And I'm interested broadly in trying to understand the composition and quality of the teachers by school as it relates to the data. Is there something that we can do from a reporting standpoint to include that?
Well, I know the information is available, but I would defer to Dr. Jones as to whether that's something that would be released in public.
That is not something what we would release in public by teacher. It's something we do internally.
Yeah, not like named by teacher, but just by the school. The same way we have data like the composition of free and reduced lunch or something. It's number of teachers on a performance plan, or however you categorize. I'm not sure, but just anything like at an aggregate level that allows someone to look and see performance, incorporating the existence of teachers into the data.
I mean, at the end of the year, you do get the evaluation report that Dr. Budd does, and it's somewhat reflected in there, but I will say, even with the new evaluation model, I'm pushing it. Not very loud.
Well, I was also going to say, I don't know if that's, and again, I don't know. We know we have Dr. Budd here somewhere or online, that that might be an HR issue if it's, and I
It
don't
would be a
know.
union issue.
Union issue. Okay. I don't know, but I think that's something we can look into also.
Yeah, whatever the constraints are, it's just, it would be like, I'm very curious, for example, if you have what is the dispersion? I have no idea. Like, what is the dispersion that you get in a school? Or a better way to put it is, how much difference does a phenomenal teacher make versus an average teacher? In terms of the growth metrics or the other scores? It's like a sort of interesting question. It's hard to, you can't know it all from looking at it, but there's probably some data that would help inform that.
I think that's a really tricky question. And I think, I've always said a lot of times where you can see the lowest scores in any state, not just in Connecticut, can be a school that has a demographic that looks very different. Some of the very best teachers are in those schools. And I think that's one reason why, as educators for many years, we have not been all about scores, because you have to look inside the classroom, because we have a teacher who is making those gains, for instance, with some of our special needs students or those high need students. And maybe we gave them 3 or 4 of our hardest students. I was speaking at Riverside last week for a parent night. And, we were giving the example, you can have 3 students and it swings 5 percentile points. So if you give a teacher 6 or 7 of your toughest kids that really need to see huge growth, that teacher may not look as strong as a teacher that didn't have that same profile in their classroom. So we do that. And I think that's what Mark is saying, is at the building level, we're drilling down and making sure, but it's a very difficult thing just to put it on paper, because it's much deeper than just saying that's a highly effective teacher. That's not. If we do get somebody that we consider that's not highly effective, we are absolutely working with those teachers.
But I guess presumably that you have some way, like, you're not putting the teachers you just described anecdotally in a performance improving plan. There's got to be some measurement that just allows someone to look and get a sense of, because if the message is, hey, scores are really hard to learn anything from, then maybe we could have skipped the 120-page deck. But given that it's a relevant input in the same way that the schools have different characteristics of students, but we still look at the data on a school by school basis. I would encourage you all to think about if there's some data that you can share that allows us to get a sense of the impact of teachers in some regard, however you want to bucket them. Because it is just a noteworthy thing that one can go through this whole booklet and you don't get any sense of what's driven by that.
I just want to also posit the fact that we also, as Dr. Jones said, each makeup of each class is different. So you can't always necessarily go by that. It's like, and each student is different. I can just say from teachers that my students have had, my students had an incredible connection with the teacher and did exceptionally well. And then there might have been another student in the same class or year before, year after that didn't have that same kind of connection with that educator. So it also comes down to the relationship or the way a teacher teaches and a student learns, I think, oftentimes. So we just have to be really cognizant of that detail. You're looking at me like I'm.
Yeah, that was one of my first question, was if it's something we track. And if the answer was we don't track it because it's not relevant, but it sounds like it's something that we track very closely and is very important. And given that it's something that we track closely and view as very important, presumably some of the aggregate data would be relevant and important for us.
No, I was just gonna say, that's something we could look at in totality of, how many of our teachers, for instance, have their students hitting growth targets, and what does that look like within a school where our union, it would be palatable also, and kind of give a glimpse of what we do, because they really do work with every single teacher. That's why, if you remember, when we talked about the strategic plan, they all have goals. They have their school goals, they have individual goals, that all ties back to the strategic plan. And they really do look at their data.
Well, you could do something fun where you could put slides in that are blank and say, we would have loved to have shared this with you, but the unions won't allow us to. And then at least we'd know.
Well, and I think also, again, I think what we're hearing tonight is a lot of success. And the last thing that I would want to do is put in any system where people say, I don't want to work there. You know, if it's a district that is not going to support, when we're seeing a lot of these celebratory data points that we're seeing tonight, why would any teacher want to come here if they're just going to feel like are always looking for the negative? And I think that was part of this whole redesign tonight, is that we really want to celebrate all the great work that's going on. And I think part of it is just really understanding we have an incredibly high functioning team. And that's what all of these people that are here tonight. And I can guarantee you they're drilling down because they all want to get the best results they can for their schools and the district.
I mean, just to say it, the notion of looking at data by teacher, I would assume would not be a negative thing, because I think the teachers in the district would probably show well, even at the aggregate level. So hopefully it's not the case that if we had teacher related data, it would show some sort of negative thing and then turn into some sort of bashing. But if that's the case, then maybe the data is even more interesting.
Kathleen?
Okay, so I know numbers aren't important, but back to the numbers. Sean, I have a question sorry, Mr. Voigt. Just for science, why I'm just interested in the shift from the decline in AP environmental science, just number of tests taken. I'm not even looking at the scores. Is that basically transferring to AP physics? I'm just trying, like, it seemed that, and I know that it's not necessarily some of that's junior year, some of those are seniors. So I guess it's kind of hard to, is there a trend there? Just so many people taking environmental science?
Yeah, there's been a fluctuation in our for different AP courses and things like that each year. I think last year was our highest amount of students that are taking that took AP Physics 1. And then this year it's a little bit lower. Now we have like over 200 students taking AP Environmental Science. So each year it's really dependent on the group of students and what classes they want to take. We have been putting a much bigger emphasis on students taking physics and honors physics, all different types of physics and physical science their junior year. That way the students have they see the most NGSS standards over their 3 years. But as they get to, we also push, we're trying to remove some barriers for kids to take some AP courses. So, and we want them to be able to select the best course sets for them. So, there is that fluctuation. Mostly comes with AP Physics 1 and AP Environmental Science each year.
Is it a
Lauren?
reflection of your awesome AP Environmental Science department?
Yeah, well, I like to think that our whole science department is quite wonderful. They do a lot of wonderful things, and our AP Environmental Science teachers do a lot within the school. And it's not just in the classroom, but outside the classroom. And they do a great job building connections with kids. And kids are excited when they go into the classroom. And the work that they do is quite remarkable. They're making huge impacts, not just in the school, but within the community. And I think that's what drives a lot of kids into those classes.
I think it's also worth noting, right? AP Physics C, which might be considered one of the hardest courses out there, now has a second section. Is that right?
Yeah, we actually have 3 sections. Yeah.
What does that mean?
So yeah, we went from
Signing up for the textbook committee?
No, definitely not. I guess. But-
I was I'm kind of worried about going through those textbook myself. So yeah, and we've had a lot of students. The enrollment in AP chemistry also has gone into over 100. I think it was 111 students. So we significantly increased the amount of section AP chemistry. We had a lot of kids test in, and again, we're just trying to remove some barriers for kids to be able to have access to higher level courses. And we're doing a really good job of that. And our teachers are doing a really great job in the classroom of making sure they're meeting the needs of all the students. We spend a lot of time at crunching data and making sure that we are monitoring their progress throughout the units. And then if we are seeing that kids are struggling, we're going back and trying to see if we can pull them in after school or during a learning center while we're in the classroom, getting in small groups and just going over that. And then another big focus is we're trying to make their thinking really visual. And so we've hopped on board with the math department and doing a lot of vertical whiteboarding, and it's been showing to have a lot of great benefits. So our teachers are doing a great job with it. Our students are doing a great job with it, and they're really enjoying their learning experiences right now.
Oh, Mike? Mike, I'm sorry, Cody. Sorry, right as both my kids know I'm in a meeting and both keep calling.
I'm so sad
Okay.
Mike had to leave.
One other question, just sometimes when new programs come up in the future and then it's hard to keep track of all of them, but are there any programs now that are kind of on the watch list where you'd say like we implemented them in the last X years and you maybe haven't gotten the results you want, or and you could open this up to everybody, but where you'd say, you know, if we're back in a year or 2 or 3 years saying we should switch to a different program, kind of like a preview to say, no, it doesn't mean that it's broken right now, but just the ones that are on your mind of, I'm not sure that we're getting the best. It sounds like everyone loves foundations and, but are there any ones where you're like, I'm just not sure yet?
Well, here's what I'll tell you. I think you've led us nicely into the discussion on our curriculum management plan, where we actually do have a systematic way of internally auditing all of our courses and all of our subjects. And if you want to switch into that, we can delve right into it. But the short answer is no, there's nothing that we're currently using that we don't think is yielding favorable results. However, because we have an ongoing process of evaluation, it would rise to the level of concern rather quickly for us, because one of the things that triggers a review is performance data. And so if we're not seeing favorable gains, that would trigger a review of the content that we're putting in front of students. And perhaps we would look at a different alternative primary resource for kids. But right now, there's nothing that we have out there that we feel is failing the kids.
The performance data hasn't triggered reviews of anything?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And can I just run through all the things that the performance data has?
Oh, are you jumping to the next subject? Next top agenda item?
I'm ready to go if you.
Well,
unless
so before we do, can you, I just was gonna ask you, to just put a pause, because I know we have a lot of, you know, principals who have an early day
Yeah, I have a feeling
tomorrow.
they're all going to leave me now.
And I also want to acknowledge, so I wanted to give them an opportunity to, you know, to leave if they need to get home to their families.
Well, I'd like
and
to thank
stuff.
them all
Well, that was
publicly for coming out tonight and presenting and for all of their hard
Keep
work.
stealing my thunder, man.
We can have mutual love for them.
So I was going to say before that also, there are 2 other individuals that are in here that their data wasn't in this report, which is Mr. Carfield Charles and our fantastic athletic director, because, you know, I'd love to see the growth that's happening at at Windrose, sorry. And, you know, I know it's hard to test our athletics, but I just wanted to also thank you for being here tonight. But, you know.
So Karen, if I could just say
Yeah.
one thing, girls cross country won the FCX championship last night.
Fantastic. And the tradition continues.
It's our first one this year, but a first of many.
And I was also going to acknowledge, right before we can end there, but I also want to acknowledge that we also have incredible arts and music programs that are reflected in, you know, some of the scores we see and are going to be reflected in the discussion our next discussion. That was going to be my role in. So you
next
know.
year, we will try to get to 150 slides.
Thank you.
Got it.
Next time, make it so that you can listen to it at double speed.
You guys, I see you guys are chomping at the bit. You can get home and have a very late dinner and snuggle time at home.
You're staying. Not everybody is dismissed.
I did say principals and so forth, but you know.
That we don't go to the.
Gonna give a moment for everybody to, you know, adjust and materials to be handed out. You don't have a collection of this up and already as a wallpaper at home? No.
Well, I'm getting ready to send some grades and stuff out, and if they don't work, just let me know, we'll find another time. And you know what, you'll really enjoy, I think, meeting some of them. Yeah. Oh, like the winner chicken dinner.
Okay, well, Mr. Kittle, thank you so much for the transition to our curriculum management plan. In front of you is a blown up version. And this is how we track and organize our curriculum by level. when I first was appointed to my position, which has continued to evolve over the last, what is this, my 5th year, Dr. Jones said she wanted a very clear and systematic way of being able to present to the public the state of our curriculum. So I want to start, before we go forward, we need to know where we've been. So in the last 4 years, here's what we've accomplished in terms of reviewing, evaluating, changing curriculum. We have put in place a new math program, K-5. We've put in a new or updated reading and writing units of study in K-2, plus supplemental tools. You mentioned foundations and geodes. We have a new universal screener, K-3, which is Dibbles. We have our Greenwich benchmark assessments that we house in Linkit. In middle school, we have a new math program. We have updated reading units of study. We have updated writing units of study. We have a new updated social studies curriculum. And at the high school, which is a more recent acquirement of mine, we are taking a methodical course by course approach to reviewing, renewing, and adopting a curriculum. So that's where we've been for the last 4 years. And I have to stop and say thank you to all of you, because none of this comes without a cost. And so when you approve our budget, you're approving my ability to influence these curricular changes out in our schools. So thank you for that. What are we doing this year? We have updated our K-2 writing units and they're launched. We have a brand new textbook, K-5 Social Studies, and this is our initial implementation of My World by Savas. You had already talked a little bit about Physics C. We are in AP Physics 1 and AP Physics C. In Physics 1, we're in an internal audit. Updates were made over the summer, but our subscription is expiring next year. So it's likely we're going to need a new primary resource. Physics C, the book has been discontinued. So we have 2 books that need to be reviewed, and a curriculum advisory committee has been formed. 3 books?
Spanish.
Oh, I didn't get there yet.
I know. Well, you said 2. So just
Well, there's 2 Physics C books that need to be reviewed. And we are looking for a Board of Ed member to sit on that committee if anyone's interested. Physics C.
I dropped out of Physics C to go back to Physics P because I missed Mr. Taylor so much.
So now's your chance.
Now's your chance to relive Physics C. AP Psychology. We have 2 books that we are going to review this year, and then we have a curriculum committee being put together as we speak to review those 2 books. And finally, we have a Spanish textbook review, and the committee selection is underway. That's what's happening this year.
And who wants to step up for that? I did send out an email.
Everything,
You're gonna be stuck with me.
everything is color coded for your I guess ease of navigation, but I liken the curriculum management plan outlook to kind of the way air traffic control monitors the planes, right? It's important to know where all the planes are at all the time, but the ones that we pay the most attention to are the ones that are taking off and the ones that are landing. The ones that are taking off are the ones that we are implementing or launching new curriculum. The ones that are landing are the ones that are under review. And why would we review something that's in play? Well, to Mr. Kittle's point, if we're not seeing success with the primary resource that we're putting in the hands of our teachers and kids aren't responding favorably to that, that would trigger an internal audit. What else triggers an internal audit? Well, if a book is discontinued, you have to pick a new primary resource. So there's a number of ways that we look at the curriculum that's in front of the students. Performance is obviously the leading variable, but sometimes the standards change. Sometimes the expectations from the state or the guidance from the state changes. So, it's important for us to constantly monitor the use of these primary resources, and who better to tell us whether these things are working but our teachers. And so one of the most important roles of our curriculum coordinators and our house administrators is having ongoing conversations about what they're seeing in the classroom and what their teachers are saying about the resources and how students are receiving instruction through those resources. Sometimes through Summer Curriculum Institute, we make minor refinements, but sometimes we find that those minor refinements will only get us so far. and a thorough internal review calls for us to look at what we have versus other primary resources that are out there that may be better suited for us. So you have 3 pages of the curriculum management plan. The first page is the elementary focus. The second page is the we have the K-5, and then we have the K-8, and then 9-12. Thank you, Tara. And then on the third page, which we didn't give you last year as a third page, we crammed it in, we blew it out. We have our English, world languages, we have FLES, and we have our fine arts and performing arts. And the list goes on and on. But it is the responsibility of the folks who are sitting behind me to monitor, track, and evaluate their curriculum on an ongoing basis. And so if you have any questions about a particular course or a particular level, everyone that's in this room is more than happy to come up and speak to their content area in their level of expertise.
Right before I call Cody, I was going to ask one particular question, because I think it's exceptionally important. It goes to what Cody was asking initially, which led us into this, which is why I thought it was interesting. For programs that are being audited, I mean, I know we typically don't see the audits, but do we ever get the opportunity to see the results, or is it just the opportunity when we see that that's when a new textbook or a new curriculum needs, or new, support materials need to come in? Is that how we find out the results of those audits?
Yeah, the
Sources?
internal audit would trigger the necessary next step, which would be to have a curriculum advisory committee to hold up our current primary resource versus perhaps 2 or 3 other primary resources that may be better suited for our students. That's when you have the board involvement.
Oh, and I'll then I know Cody had a question.
If someone were, I'm interested in the whole language, reading instruction and the Lucy Calkins kind of school of thought. How much, like on a scale of, I feel bad asking this with both Mike and Jen Bencivago not here, but how much, like between 0 traces of that in our curriculum to 100% fully the whole, doing every part of it, where would we be right now in terms of reading instruction?
It's a great question, and I'm glad you asked that, because I think there was certainly last year an incredible buzz when you heard about the science of reading, and then you heard about the science of reading wars, and Lucy Calkins' name was certainly out in the forefront of everything that she put out there was ineffective, and we were doing irreparable harm to our students. Well, first of all, that's certainly not the case. I think enough people have come out with additional research that has kind of debunked that myth. But Kim can talk specifically to how our K-2 curriculum in particular is incredibly robust and is specifically aligned with the science of reading, because we have a multifaceted approach to primary reading instruction. But Kim can certainly explain it much better than I can.
Yeah, so we look at our comprehensive approach to literacy in K-2 in a lot of different areas. Very visual, in case I ever needed to bring it up, is how I described 3rd grade before as like a culminating of all of this. We are looking to hit all of the 5 pillars of reading in our instruction, especially at our K-2 level. So we have phonics instruction through our foundations program in pre-K through 3rd grade. So we explicitly and systematically go through all of the phonics patterns, all of the different elements in a very systematic way through an Orton Gillingham approach under the program of Wilson's Foundations. We added in phonemic awareness, explicit instruction through the resource of Hegarty last year in our K-2 classrooms last year, and then we backed it up to K-1. We had a bridge year for our 2nd graders last year that didn't get that prior. So we're covering our strands down here in the word recognition, getting our kids to understand letters and sounds, how we manipulate sounds. We want to build that word recognition strand. Then we are up in the language comprehension. So we want our kids to be able to understand language early on, so that then they can understand language when they read it. So in this area, we have our vocabulary instruction at K2 or K5. But in our early primary grades, which I think is what you're referring to, we use our knowledge building text geodes to introduce vocabulary. Foundations also has vocabulary instruction. And then we do vocabulary acquisition through our read alouds, through our units of study as well. Now, when you're talking about Lucy Calkins, I think you're talking about the units of study and reading, which is really what we're using for our comprehension strand. And we just bought the revised units. They were implemented last year. And it really takes into account all of that research that you're talking about. And they have improved the units to incorporate some of this here as well, but also focusing on the priority standards of reading literature and reading for information. We introduced some new read aloud books this year as well that really focus on intense language comprehension through interactive read aloud at our primary grades in K2 this year. So we feel really confident in our early literacy that we're meeting all of these strands, which when we are strong in these areas, it builds together to build fluency, how we read orally, which ultimately leads to reading comprehension in the upper grades and in the lower grades as well. But we don't just have one program, we have a multifaceted approach to how we cover all 5 of these pillars. And not to mention, we have our digital tool, Lexia, which is on the computer. It is adaptive to our kids' needs and meets them where they are. So with all of that, that's really what we're building our comprehensive program. We also in the upper grades have vocabulary workshop and grammar workshop with Sadlier in 4th and 5th grade, which I think is part of those reasons you're seeing those 4th and 5th grade scores start to rise, those 6th grade scores. So everything that we've added in addition to our units of study, have really supported the overall improvement and achievement of our kids.
Do we buy any of the purple column? Is that something that we buy from one of her companies or the company she's associated with?
So the units of study are a Heinemann product.
Is that the one that I can't remember from?
So yeah, the units of
Okay.
study are associated with her.
Got it.
However, we feel comfortable and confident that they are meeting the needs of our students, and the feedback that we're getting from teachers now with the updated units is they're starting to see how all of these pieces together fit and how the new revised units are really taking into consideration all the things that they're doing in other parts of their day and how they weave together in order to meet the needs of the students that are in front of them.
So my 0 to 100 question, the answer is not 0. It's somewhere in, there's 4
It's one of the
columns,
5
it's 25.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know,
20.
it covers our comprehension piece. And I think what else is important to note is the public criticism was around her original units, and it was around it being the standalone and approach to reading instruction
Without all those.
without all of the additional layers. We don't use those units. We've used the refined versions of the units that marries nicely or couples nicely with the other reading programs that are layered in to address the other tenets of the science of reading. So it's just one piece of it.
My favorite thing about, I think, whenever that New York Times piece came out, I was visiting all 15 schools, and I got to ask each principal what their views were of that. And it was like kind of a hot topic at the moment. And 14 of the 15 principals knew what I was talking about, and one of them didn't. Is no longer with us, but the range of opinions among the principals in the school system is quite wide. It was very interesting. Lots of passionate perspectives.
And I think if you were to go out and talk to them now versus when the articles started to come out back then, I think people's opinions have changed. And I think the reason their opinions have changed is due to the professional learning that they have undergone underneath Kim's leadership with the publisher and the curriculum writers coming out to our schools, showing how the curriculum should be taught, doing it in front of students, then having teachers pull out and have conversations about the implementation. So we've done it in a very methodical way where every single school was trained. And you might want to talk a little bit about the intensive training our K2 teachers went through. And just to your point, Mr. Kittle, we're right now in the internal audit for 3.5. So we haven't made changes to our 3.5 reading and writing instruction yet, but it would make sense for alignment purposes and continuity to adopt and include the new units of study in 3.5 so that you're not having kids live in a certain pattern of instruction K2 and then a complete switch in 3.5. And the other thing is we are still I don't know if the state is listening to me tonight, but we are still a little bit at odds with the state on our reading waiver. And Dr. Jones could probably provide a little bit better update than I am. But my belief is that we dig in, and we believe that the results that we're seeing are again, I talked about this earlier, based on the robust curriculum that we're providing to our teachers. And I don't see why we should be required to select something from the state when the districts that have selected something from the state aren't performing at the levels that we are.
I think one of the things that you can see too is if you were to look at at slide 28, one of the big things that we did this year, in addition to making sure that we have a comprehensive approach, is we're looking at a comprehensive screener for our students. And our DIBELS scores at the end of the year, showing the proficiency of our students. You can see just by the ending of our kindergartners are at 85%, our first graders are at 89%, our second graders are at 86, our third graders are at 77. And this is the band in which all of those components are coming together and that they're being implemented. So I feel very strongly that our kids are meeting with success and low risk for moving them up to that third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade. I think this is some of the data that shows the success of this year in particular, with all the components in place in K2.
Me too. Any other questions on the curriculum management plan? It's pretty self-explanatory. Yes, Madam Chair.
I do have a few, I have two quick questions and then one or two little ones. But so I know we made a lot of changes to the K5 plus program this year. Not a lot, but we changed the
number of
schedule.
instructional minutes.
Yes,
You
number
can
of
say
instructional
it.
minutes. I don't want to have to say it. I just was going to say changes to the program. But I saw that we're not due for an update until 2018. It mentioned in there. So I'm hoping that not an update, but a review of the program. I guess it is
2018?
2028. Oh,
2018 was a
this is
good.
what happens when I'm typing quickly. Sorry. Anyway, my point is that I'm hoping that we're going to get a little update in the next year and beyond to see if that change has been a positive impact for the other courses that, we've added some time to, and make sure it's not had any kind of negative impact.
Yeah, one of the things I had said during Summer Curriculum Institute, and Jeffrey can certainly come up and talk about the incredible work that him and his team did over the summer. When we did reduce the number of instructional minutes, it required him and his team to go back and look at what were the essential understandings. Oh, there we go. What were the essential understandings that we wanted to make sure remained in the curriculum, given the constraints of time? So do you want to talk a little bit about that work and then how we're going to track performance this year, right, relative to the time change and compare it to past performance?
Sure. So our units, why we're not up for a review for a few years, is we have our new units and we're going to look and see how our students are adapting to the units. And in fifth grade, students take the Avant Stamp assessment at the end of the year. So we have years of past data with the more robust minutes. So we'll be able to do a comparative analysis of how our students are performing now with the new units of study based off of the time that they have for instruction and what our students had in the past. So far our teachers are going through the units, they're seeing how the kids are adapting, and we're making changes as we go in order to make sure that students are learning the language, they're experiencing it the way that we want them to, they're enjoying the class, and we're not just trying to rush through things to get them to get to a certain point, but that they're actually learning the languages.
That's great.
What's your next question?
I also, it's not about foreign language. So it was actually, because I also know we're in year one of pre-K curriculum. And again, we're not, I think it says 2027 that there's going to be a review. So I just hope that we're going to get a little updates along the way to see how our youngest learners are doing.
So you finally touched upon something that I don't oversee, which is the pre-K curriculum.
Well, I just noticed it's in
We,
here.
because we are
so-
a pre-K through 12 plus district, and I would be happy to talk to Dr. Heiligenthal. And if an update is what you asked for, we can provide that.
I just want to see how they're doing and how that is rolling out. We don't have to do it tonight, but
Okay.
obviously, because I didn't ask in advance. And then, so I just had two other quick questions. I was looking at last year's curriculum management plan versus this year's, and I saw that there were two items that were slated for last year, but were moved to this year. It was like I think it was 3-5 writing and internal audit of the existing writing units. I see it's now moved to 20, like it was slated for 2023, 24, but I see it's now listed as 24, 25. So I didn't know, I was wondering why that got moved. And I also had a similar question for something in 912 math, because we were doing an internal audit of stats, topics in math, and AP Computer Science A, which was listed for this year, but I think it's been pushed back another year. So I was just curious as to why that may have occurred. Just
Sure.
for curiosity.
So I'll let Andrew handle the high school one first, and then we can circle back.
So as you all know, we've done a lot of work in the high school math department over the last couple of years, and not that we have adoption fatigue, but it's been a lot researching new programs and implementing them. So we did decide to push ahead some of the electives just so we can get a little bit more settled with big ideas implementation. We're still only in the third year there, and we're in our first year with all the new pre-calculus and calculus materials. So we did push it ahead. It still continues to be a priority, but just need a little bit more time to take care of the business that we have right now in front of us. And as I mentioned earlier, we're doing a lot of work with the pre-AP as well as trying to shore up our work with the SAT. So we'll certainly get to it, and believe that it needs to be done. Maybe just one more year.
Oh, that's a perfect response. I mean, like I said, I mean, Mark talks about it, like things change, and we talk about like when budget impacts things, and sometimes priorities change and get moved. So it's just good to know. And I just was curious as to why it got pushed back, but it's a perfect reason. We're focusing on what we have and making sure that those programs are, first.
Yeah, and going back to the 3-5 reading and writing, one of the main reasons why we weren't ready to review last year is because the units weren't ready for us to review. And the other reason was for Miss Palladino's sanity, given the fact that she was rolling out K2 reading and writing and the new Dibble screener, felt like it was just too much to put on her plate and for 1 year. And we want to do a good job when we do an internal review of a new primary resource.
Again, perfect response. It's important that we focus on the programs that we've already brought in to make sure that those are working well before we dig into the next. So thank you. I don't know if anybody else has curriculum management questions.
You can take those home, or I won't be offended if you leave them. I will collect them I sure will. Come by and see them anytime.
So before we close out, I just really wanted to thank you for, this curriculum management plan we've gotten it the past couple of years. It's really opened the doors, I think, to ensuring that the horizontal and vertical alignment of our curriculum in the district. And you can see the positive results of having that, as well as the forward-facing documents and the work our schools are doing to bring parents into the equation more. You can see that when we go back to our prior discussion of our achievement results. So I just wanted to thank you for that. This is something we've been asking for forever. So it's nice to see the work that you guys are doing is paying off in other ways too. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
And thank you to all of our administrators for spending the evening with us. They don't want to hear about, the other fun stuff we've got coming. You ready? Good night, Mr. Mayo. I see he wants to hang out for staff survey stuff. So I guess now I feel like an echo in here. We're moving on to our next agenda item. So Dr. Jones, staff survey.
And this will be very quick. In your achievement packet that where we started tonight, there are some slides on this survey. I'll just hit the district results. Our family survey was at 89%. It's actually like 89.8. It was almost 90.
That's
for our
satisfaction?
families. Pardon?
That's satisfaction?
Yes, which is incredibly high. Student survey was at 72. And what you find with students is they're happiest in elementary, then they go to middle and you go down a little bit. Yeah, they would have, unless this is not working. And here, just trade me if you want, we'll reach.
I just heard, I had a couple people reach out saying they couldn't really hear her. So
We switched, so this one should be better.
it's important to hear about the positive.
So with the survey data, I'll just repeat, the family survey was just over 89. It was almost 90%, but we list 89 because we were rounding. Student survey was at 72%. And what happens is elementary is always the highest, and then you go down a little bit in middle. And as Mr. Mayo was referencing in high school, that's a focus for them. Trying to get a better rating from our high schoolers is a challenge, but to be at 72% says our kids, our students, love their schools, and that's what we want to see. And even in our teacher and staff survey, as you remember, when we were putting the strategic metric together, we talked a lot about this, and we really believed it was important to have this as part of our strategic plan. We were at 69%. We went up 1%. We'd love to see that higher, but I can tell you on all three of those metrics, we were 10% above what our goal was last year. And if you saw the article that came out today about how dissatisfied parents across Connecticut are with their schools, the metric was just, it was incredibly low. It doesn't look like this. And I know the team that just left, one of the reasons I think our family survey is so high is we have such a highly engaged PTA. And when they tell us that we need to do something better, we listen. And when they share with us, if there's a concern where they want more information, we go and we work on that. And that kind of references those forward-facing documents. And the last thing I'll mention is that just as we did last year, we let people know all of the school site surveys will be posted tomorrow on the school site website. So if you go to those websites, it'll be right on the front page, and you can see the survey results for all of our schools.
Just have a quick question about, I think overall the surveys are great. There's some schools that have less, have lower ratings. And I'm just wondering, what's the process for following up and kind of looking at why are some schools seeing higher satisfaction than others? And like, are they sharing best practices?
What slide number are you referencing, if I can?
I think it's the very last page. Good. The staff survey results.
Yeah, my pages started falling off, so that's okay. I'll go ahead and answer. We do go in and every principal and their staff look at their survey results with a very serious lens. And for instance, we have one elementary that we knew was lower from staff rating this year considerably. We know exactly what the issue was, worked on it all summer long, and at least knock on wood right now, they are thrilled. They happen to be a building that needed those world language minutes to go back into what they really value in that school. So they made a scheduling change this summer to shift those minutes. And that is exactly what they're asking for. So at the end of the year, when we give this survey, we talk a lot about what is the best time of the year to give the survey, because teachers are tired by the end of the year. If they're frustrated about something, you may see that on the survey. But when we see a score like that, usually it's something specific, and we work on that, as a team. So I think you'll see that one, for instance, go up. Sometimes if it's a parent survey, it may be if their survey is a little bit lower, maybe they're not as connected with a principal, or they're not as engaged, they're not out front greeting kids. And again, it's working with their PTA to find out why do we think that that would be lower. But they really are very targeted in how they go in and try to get those results up.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And I was concerned about it. It was the staff survey. And so that's really good to know that it's great that it was feedback that people saw and realized there was something that needed to be addressed, and it was addressed over the summer. So maybe it's good to do it at the end of the school year when you have the summer to do some course correction.
Speaking of the staff survey, so I guess my quick question is, first of all, it's nice to see that we have increased our high rate of response, our rate of response, as you mentioned, 316 more staff members took the survey. I know it's not just given to teachers, right? It's also given to other support staff.
But it is
Classrooms.
mainly our teachers that take the survey, because the principals make a real concerted effort to try to get as high response rate as they can. So they tend to do it a lot of times when they're having a staff meeting. So instead of just leaving it up to chance that people will go and take the survey, they try to build in time so that when they have to be there anyway, they can take the survey. But a para, for instance, could take the survey.
Well, I know there's more positive responses, as, so we said at some schools versus others. And I'm glad to hear that we're taking a look at the schools that aren't having as much of a positive, or their scores and positivity have dropped slightly from year to year. Because again, I know we've repeatedly said this all night, and I say it often, without our educators, these are just buildings with children in them. And, it's so important that we recognize the incredible work that's being done in those buildings every day by our teachers. And if they're not happy, then it makes it a little more difficult to come in and be, extra successful in sharing the joy of education sometimes. So, I do appreciate that you're taking a deep dive here, but I don't know what else. I think it's important that we also as a board sort of continue to take that deep dive as what we can do to support our educators in the ways that they need. So.
And I just have to take a moment, since we're talking about this, I think the budget is when we have a lot of those discussions. And when and not even capital, I'm just going to mention operating, because when we talk about the role of a teacher and you go from 11% who were qualifying for special education, for instance, to 16, we've added a lot of students, who have significant needs that were qualifying. They were always there. We just heard from their parents because they weren't qualifying. Now we're hearing a little bit more from teachers, because we need to make sure that they have the resources that they need. And we've been doing that. And so just as a reminder, when we had the budget meeting the other day, committee meeting, we took out that $800,000 and utilized for the acceleration of curriculum ARP. So this year that needs to go back in so we can continue to support all of those resources that you are hearing tonight, and we can continue the work.
Does anybody else have are there any other questions on the survey data? I would personally want to wait to look at all the stuff that's being posted on the school websites, but.
We talk about it, my meeting is actually tomorrow, and we'll talk about what results look like, what our teacher results look like, but they're not the exact same surveys. So it's hard to compare apples to apples.
Okay, no other questions, comments, or whatnot. Then we can roll over to the big exciting moment of the night, our budget. Hey, Ben.
Hello. I am joined with our facilities director, Dan Watson, and not to be outdone by our academic colleagues, we have a 119 slide deck to walk through the capital plan with you.
Huh? This one?
The document before you did see in the early September. We did meet with the finance committee or the budget committee during the last week in September. Couple of adjustments we made, which you'll see is we do not have HAMAV HVAC. Given the conversation we're having, that likely would be an interim appropriation. That was removed from the capital plan. We combined Julie and Curtis Phase 3 project, just from a cash flow perspective. We just added that to one fiscal year rather than spread out in two. And we did have a productive meeting with Parks and Rec and Land Use to go over the Western Middle School field lighting. And we moved out the major purchase to year 2, and we added some planning money to really go through the process together on all the things necessary for Western Middle School. Still up in the air is whether or not where that big 2.5 should fall, but we left it in our plan for the time being with a small planning money in the year we're planning for, just to go through some of the land use approvals. Those are the major changes from the last time you saw the document. In addition, all the project sheets are in front of you with the itemized programs by school. And Dan and I are happy to answer any questions or you may have.
I don't have any, I'm sorry if this is quiet. I don't have any specific questions because I have to be 100% honest. I did look through this, but it was a very long and very in-depth report. And like I said, I looked through quickly. I have to go back through again with a much deeper dive, but you know, are there any projects that are budgeted for this year that you think, you know, I shouldn't say this year, I should say for years down the road that you think we need to pay more attention to at a closer date? Or do you really think that these numbers are budgeted out? Other than, obviously, I know you just said you moved the lighting over a year, but.
You know, it's a good question. Just to remind everyone, this is a planning document. It will change year to year. We think as it sits today, the numbers are as accurate as we can get them. The finance committee really wanted us to take a look at, did we escalate where projects or the cost is appropriate? So we did take a hard look at the first 5 years of the numbers. We're very confident of what we know today and the scope of the project. Those are the best numbers we have. I think still one up in the air, I think from the last meeting, the last conversation we had was whether or not we wanted to invest in the driveway access at GHS campus. So the year we're planning, we did put in planning money for that, but the large project is still out in year 5 or fiscal year 30. So we're having a placeholder for that project. But I think the difficulty of that project, we made this comment at the finance committee, is the project is a casualty of time. It's been out there for a very long time, change in leadership, change in staff. I think if you want to reboot that conversation, you should invest some of the planning money. We put about 150,000 in to plan for the entire project of the driveway. And we did have a placeholder in year 5. I think that's the biggest conversation piece. Everything else is, I think, either you've seen it in the past and has been just being in the process of being implemented.
Actually, thank you for bringing that up because I guess, you know, doing the GHS front entryway, the second egress was a discussion that came up quite often. Especially, I know we had some work on post roads being changed and whatnot, you know, pushed back, but I definitely think it is high time to have that discussion again, because you're saying if that's 5 years out, I mean, we've been talking about this for at least 5 years so far. So maybe we can add that to a later agenda, but you know, tonight's not agenda planning.
And one thing we really try to do, and that's a good project to look at when you go to that, and it is on the electronic copy, it's page 11, where we could find electronic link. We applied electronic link. Of course, the links won't work on hard copy, but if you're looking online, we made a link to the most recent source document. So Cardinal Stadium or Cardinal Field improvements, we linked to the most recent conversation that occurred. And some of the questions we had were actually already addressed in the Q&A piece of it. So it is a good reminder to, if you have time, to just click on the links where we did provide them, just to provide additional background.
That's awesome, because I was going to ask about the field projects. Sophie?
I just have a question about the Hamilton Avenue lights. I know we've all waited so long for the fields to open. I'm sorry, Western. With the sorry, not wrong school. Anyway, with the Western fields, if we push the lights out, I mean, are we extending the amount of time that we're going to get full use of those fields? I'm just, seeing where the money is. Like, does that mean that next year we wouldn't have any lights, or is there any way to accelerate that?
You can accelerate the funding. I think you still have a land use process to go through, so that's not an automatic uh, guarantee that you're still going to have, I think, some restrictions on it. But I think the major point we really are comfortable pushing it out on is that field has been no activity for several years, probably, I think around eight-ish years, no activity. I think it would be in the best interest of both in Parks and Rec, we talked about this, both the town, the Board of Ed, and even the neighborhood, get used to the existing utilization that will increase. They're not used to that traffic. And then you get a baseline. Then going forward, are you going to add the lights? But I think if you open up the field and try to put lights at the same time, you're just having, I think, increased usage that they're not used to for the last 8 years. That field's been completely out of play.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Does anybody else have a specific question? Cody? Okay. Laura?
I just saw that we engaged a firm to figure out whether there are any incentives for the refurbishment of the Ham Ave geothermal. Do we have a time frame for when they might be ready to give us some information?
Ben, she's referencing the memo today.
Yeah, absolutely. The best timeline I could get was that we disengaged the consultant to do the valuation. They said based on their current scope of work and timeline, it's a 4-week turnaround. So we anticipate a mid-November to get the number, which would then dovetail into the conversation that our CLA consultant will have. Is not once they have that, does it meet the 80-20 rule? So mid-November, we'll hopeful we'll have a more concrete answer.
Would we have to vote on that funding separately from our capital budget, or would we still be able to vote at the same time? Would we have all the
Well, if
information?
we're not getting the information back from them until November, we have to vote. This is for a vote
Next
in
week,
October.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, we removed the Ham Ave HVAC. It's not in the capital plan in front of you. It was in the plan in early September when you first saw it, but because of that conversation, because of, I think we want to make a decision by the end of this calendar year. We'll go through an interim appropriation for that, which would likely be, I think December is a little too aggressive based on the schedule of meetings, but likely would be a January conversation. So otherwise you'd have to wait until May through the normal budget process to get the appropriation, and we want to be able to make a decision earlier. But the plan in front of you does not have Ham Ave HVAC.
Anyone else? No. So I will say this was a lot to go through. I mean, just as an aside, we had a 40-minute presentation to watch and 120 pages of like achievement data and, which is our one crack at that and some of, the other topics tonight for curriculum and whatever. And I know, like I said, I've read through this, but I have a deeper dive that I wanted to take. So I know the budget committee has had a look through this. I don't know if there's anything you guys wanted to share or about your thoughts on this before we meet next week, but I will also suggest if any board members have questions that we do send those over as soon as possible. And I know a Q&A sheet will also be, added. I know so anything you want to?
Yeah, luckily this is a lot easier year than prior capital budget years. There's like the open questions are quite marginal.
Awesome.
Reduce the HVAC air conditioning payments in this room.
Well, we could certainly reduce our energy usage by, lowering the, not making it so cold. So because when there's so many people in here, the temperature goes up. Again, that's an early, that's an elementary science lesson. Does anybody? No, we don't. My point simply is or does anybody else have any other questions? If not, please send them ASAP because I know we really need to get that Q&A document if we're going to have any questions out there. Going once, going twice. Okay, sold.
So can I
Which
make a
takes
motion
us to the
for us?
next agenda item, which I'm gonna just introduce and then, yeah. That's fine. So we have one action item this evening, which is, the board vacancy. I have a little, but you can, if you have something you want to say first. Oh, okay. Well, no. She hasn't made a motion, or an actual motion, and we haven't seconded it and taken a vote, so we have to
Like
do
to make
that
a
first.
motion for us to caucus?
Okay, all in favor? Okay. Is Wendy there? Oh, Wendy's hand is raised. I don't know if that's a question or she's.
No,
voting.
I voted to be unanimous with you all.
Perfect. All right, so we will,
Karen, who made the second? I don't believe that happened.
Sophie? You made the second. Yeah. Well, no, we all have to exit the room. So, just because we have the Zoom on. So,
Yeah.
if you wouldn't mind putting a message up to the public, that would be great. And we will let you know when we'll be back.
Oh, okay. Who are you running?
No, I'm just taking Lucy.
Oh,
Lucy's running with Jamie.
Oh,
But Jamie's
wait, I thought
going-
he's also doing the other vote, isn't he? Is he doing two votes?
He's doing two votes.
Okay.
Yeah, he's doing two votes, but they came and talked to, was your son there?
He was there. He said, and then he made me want to do video.
Of what?
Like, home, and I was like.
For what?
"Oh, for decoration, yes."
Yeah,
What is this?
we had
A Olympic rower.
he's a four-time Olympian. He's got one ball, one ball, he's did with us.
Hmm. Are we back in session? Yeah. Okay, well, thank you for waiting. Now on to the action item, which I will. So I was going to say before we move towards a vote, I just wanted to say, prior to taking the vote to fill the vacancy in the board, I felt it was important to again share information with the community so that they understand the board's process for filling the vacancy. We are guided by board bylaws, policy 9221, filling vacancy, which has clear guidance as how the board will fill the current vacancy, as well as Connecticut State Statute 10-219, which includes information as to how that successor shall be elected by the board until the next municipal election. The board wanted to ensure the process was both transparent and appropriate. We had allowed time for interested candidates to reach out to us and to find a date where all members of the board were available as a group to meet with the candidates, or dates, I should say, and to ensure the process was, again, as I said, transparent and that each candidate was given the same opportunity. We met with all 6 candidates and asked each the same questions. We wanted to thank all of the candidates that we met with and hope that, if not selected to fill this vacancy this year, that they consider running for the board in the years ahead. As you could see from our agenda this evening, the board remains focused on improving student outcomes and ensuring our students and our schools are the best that they can be. And with that, I am going to open things up to nominations to fill the vacancy. What?
Nominations? No, we're just.
Can we make a motion to delay this vote?
Yes, you can make a motion to delay.
I would like
If
to
you-
volunteer to make a motion to delay this vote.
Okay, hold on. I just realized I am not on the Zoom, so I can't see our other members.
I'd like to,
Oh, there you go. Wendy,
yes,
are you seconding that motion?
yes, I'm seconding it.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table to delay the vote, and a second. Do we have a discussion now that's on the table?
I think I'm willing to vote for that so long as we commit to doing our homework this week and for there to be a special meeting on Wednesday to finally get this done, because I think that it's important that we're a fully operating board.
I completely agree. I was going to say the same thing, that I think it's exceptionally important. We haven't had any very, serious votes as of yet. We have certainly had discussions. We're coming up on a vote on the budget at least next week, and we truly need to make sure that we have all 8 seats filled by the time we get to operating and giving that new individual time to onboard and get up to speed. Obviously, we really need to get this taken care of for multiple reasons. It's important to have all 8 seats filled. So as long as we can meet on Wednesday, I can send around an email to the members of the board to see what time might work best. But if everyone's amenable to that, then
Okay, but that's fine. But Wendy, you can do it Wednesday?
Yes.
everyone else, Wednesday? Does anybody else have points for discussion?
Nope.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sorry, I can't remember if you already said this, but just for the public to understand, this is just for, this seat would come up again next year and there'll be 3 Republican seats in the next election.
Yeah, so this seat is to be filled for a year until the next municipal election, at which point the RTC puts forward 2 candidates for 4 years and 1 candidate for a year, or for 2 years. Excuse me. They can put forward as many candidates as they would like for their seats, but they will acknowledge which one is a 2-year candidate. So I should say they've put 2 up or 1. They have 3 seats available and they will, yeah. All right, well, since there's no more discussion on tonight's vote, I'm sorry, this was a highlight for many, I assume, but I would like to take vote on this motion to table the vote till next week. All in favor of tabling the vote till next week? Okay, mhm. Wendy, can you verbally, because I don't have you up on screen. Okay, so that is 6-0. And with that, is there another motion that wants to be, out there?
I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second? Lada, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, another 6-0. So thank you for all who've held on this long, and we will see you guys next week.